Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and I give my shard blade to my co-host, Scott Daly.
I don't want it.
What? You can't refuse a shard blade? It's priceless.
It just really seems like I'm gonna regret this. My fairy friend over there is like telling me that it smells weird. I don't know, man. I don't like it.
You think too much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you are all having a wonderful Friday evening or Saturday morning, depending on where you are. I'm sure we know a lot of you folks in the chat, but if you are joining us here for the very, very first time, welcome. We, meaning Matt and I, are Doof Media, and we make podcasts all about stories we love. We also arrange and organize this monthly book club. Matt, explain what's a book club?
Well, each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put a poll up for all the supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia, and then we let them vote on which they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
That's right. Then we meet up on the last Friday of every month, aka today, and chat about the book. We pull slides of important or interesting moments in it and dive deep into it for a couple of hours. For those of you in chat right now, say hello, say hi, feel free to make comments, ask questions. This is an interactive discussion. This is not just Matt and I talking, although, let's be fair, it's Matt and I. We will be doing a lot of that. But please interact, talk to us, especially about this book. I think this is a fan favorite. We had a lot of discussion on this book last month, so I'm guessing we're going to have the same amount this month. Speaking of that book, Matt, what is the book?
Well, this month we are back to finish up the incredibly lengthy book, which is the first Stormlight Archive novel, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, that's right. This book is 1,000 pages long, so we divided it in half. We read through book 2 last month, and we are coming back here to finish it up with books 3, 4, and 5. Although 5's it's like a coda. It's like 20 pages there at the end of this massive book. Gosh, there's so many people in chat, Matt. I can't keep up with it. Hello, I'm not going to call you out by name because there's too many of you, but when I say hi, know that I am talking to you specifically.
Yes. Louise says they're a longtime follower who is first time joining us for the book club, so welcome.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just said I wasn't going to call anyone out specifically, and then you immediately did that.
I'm going to call out, hi, world editor Jess, Hero of Old Iron John, 567, Sammy, Sylphrenia, Kyrgyzstan.
Whoa! Bird on Kyrgyzstan. Jeez. What did they ever do to you? So we normally would do like an overview of the book. But because it's the same book, we're not going to do an overview of the book. So instead, we're going to move into our overall impressions of specifically this half of the book. For those of you that don't remember or weren't here last time around, Matt and I overall enjoyed the book, but we were a little cooler on the first half. Matt, has your impression of The Way of Kings changed in the last 550 pages?
It has. I think that it brought me around the way everyone kind of said it would. I think everyone says that Sanderson's novels tend to take a while to get going, and then they build up momentum. They put all the pieces in place, and then they finish strong, and that's certainly true. I think on the whole, I'm still kind of annoyed with Sanderson for taking so damn long to get to like the good part. Like it doesn't for me. This is, I'm gonna just say all of my complaining right now and then not do any more. But
Sure.
like it really didn't need to be this long. Like so many of these scenes, we talk a lot about writers who are doing like several things with each scene, or even a single paragraph can be doing 3 things. With Sanderson, it's like usually a single paragraph is doing one thing. At least that's how I feel. Maybe we'll go through these slides today and I'll prove myself wrong.
Sure.
But I'm just like, come on, man. Like so many of these scenes didn't even need to be here at all, period. But yeah, we'll get through it. And I mean, it all culminates in a really, really satisfying place. So I can't really be too mad, can I?
No, not at all. We'll get through it. It's just a very funny way to phrase that. I enjoyed this book a lot. I think I was a little more into it than you at the beginning, and I think we're both finishing it with me a little bit more into it than you are. I do agree with you. I think there are parts of the book that don't really earn the 1,000 pages. I will say that our main character, I think, earns being in a story this long. I think Kaladin's arc over the story is one that I think needs to like stretch on throughout, like, because a lot of this is just him being beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, and eventually finally getting to a place where he finally is able to learn something. And that one felt to me like it needed to be long and stretched out over the course of a lot of stuff, a lot of story. um but a lot of the other stuff, I think I'm with you on. Do we need to have 1,000 pages? But like, that's my that's I think that really honestly gets to the only complaint I really have is, did it need to be 1,000 pages? And that's a very lukewarm complaint. The last 200-300 pages like floored me. I couldn't,
Yeah.
like, I was just nonstop reading. It was exciting. It totally drew you in. You were invested for not just one character's journey, but every single character and what they were doing, what was happening. The climactic action sequences were just excellent. I think I think when the shard blade was given up, my jaw, like, I think I audibly gasped while reading out loud, made a gasp noise when Dalinar gave up his shard blade. And that to me is just a symptom of a book working on me in every way it should. So I really enjoyed reading this book. And
Yeah.
we'll see if I enjoy talking about it. I think so.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, everything at the end was just exceedingly well set up.
Yeah.
And I mean that I want to study, how well set up it was, how he did that for
Mhm.
sure. Cool. All right, Scott, you ready to get into this book?
Yeah, let's just dive right into it. We got lots. As we get into the first section, let's just look over a chat. People are talking about how you can use the book to kill people, which is, I mean, that's just great conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they're saying that's why it's 1,000 pages, is so you can have a convenient weapon at hand.
A great story and a weapon. In
you,
these troubled times, you need both.
and you don't even have to wait 10 heartbeats. It's just there all the time.
Yeah, yeah. How
All
cool would
right.
it be if you could summon a book out of thin air in 10 seconds? Like, I didn't leave my house this month, so reading this was a lot more convenient. But like, in those days before times when we went places, carrying a book around that's this thick is a pain. So if I could just like shard book it, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I was carrying around like massive doorstop novels, and they were basically a signal to everyone to not talk to me, or be my friend. But if the book could be like, hidden and then only appear when I needed to read it, then that would have been really convenient.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Cool.
All right, hey, let's talk
Let's do it.
about this stuff.
So we start part 3 off by returning to our old friend Shalon, who is getting a stern talking to by Yasna about her wit.
God, Matt, you're wonderful. You're great.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Never change.
Yasna opened one of her books. I have found that youths like you have a relative lack of appreciation for the distant past. Therefore, I selected an area of study that is both more recent and sensational to ease into true scholarship. Is the murder of the king not of interest to you? Yes, Brightness, Shalon said. We children love things that are shiny and loud. You have quite a mouth on you at times. At times? You mean it's not there at others? I'll have to... Shalon trailed off, then bit her lip, realizing she'd gone too far. Sorry. Never apologize for being clever, Shalon. It sets a bad precedent. However, one must apply one's wit with care. You often seem to say the first passably clever thing that enters your mind. I know, Shalon said. It's long been a foible of mine, Brightness. One of my nurses and tutors... one my nurses and tutors tried very hard to discourage. Likely through strict punishments. Yes, making me sit in the corner holding books over my head was the preferred method. Which, in turn, Yasna said with a sigh, only trained you to make your quips more quickly, for you knew you had to get them out before you could reconsider and suppress them. Shalon cocked her head. The punishments were incompetent, Yasna said. Used upon one such as yourself, they were actually encouragement, a game. How much would you have to say to earn a punishment? Could you say something so clever that your tutors missed the joke? Sitting in the corner just gave you more time to compose retorts. But it's unseemly for a young woman to speak as I so often do. The only unseemly thing is to not channel your intelligence usefully. Consider, you have trained yourself to do something very similar to what annoys you in the scholars. Cleverness without thought behind it. Intelligence, one might say, without a foundation of proper consideration. Yasna turned a page. Arrogant, wouldn't you say? Um, so, uh, uh, so here, Shallan is just completely destroyed by Yasna.
Yes. This is. I think I wanted to use this slide maybe to kind of just talk about Shallan generally with you, or Shaolin, as I heard she likes to be called. Um, I think you and I were pretty down on this character after the first half of the book, right?
Yeah,
And I think I liked her better in the second half. I think a lot of people said, "Oh, just wait till you get to the second half, you'll like her better." And I think I do. And it's not because she changes. I think it's because the book changes the ways in which it treats her. And I think this part right here really sets the tone for that, because this is basically Yasna just like fucking ripping her to shreds, and like she kind of deserves it. Like, I mean, she's being kind of a jerk here, and
yeah,
like the thing I love about this so much is that like, is the murder of a king not of interest to you? Yes, brightness, Shallan said. We children love things that are shiny and loud. She's talking about this woman's father.
yeah.
That was her
Right.
dad. Like, stop being like fucking witty. It's dead. It's dead, dad. Stop
Yeah.
it.
Right. So I mean that this was one of our kind of complaints last time was she's not that witty actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like her whole shtick is supposedly, oh, she's so witty, and you're reading and you're like, this isn't that clever. Like this is okay. I'm certainly not laughing. And then we have this other character be like, hey, like, it's not that you're incapable of being witty and funny. It's that you need to just only say the ones that are actually funny and then keep the other ones to yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's actually pretty good advice for a young person. I mean, I think everyone sort of struggles when they're young with like being funny and like, okay, what is when should I speak and when should I not speak and that kind of thing.
sure.
Um, but I was like, as soon as I got to this part, I was like, oh, okay, like thank God, like Sanderson is doing this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And then I immediately felt way more relaxed and like kind of open to this character.
Sure, sure.
And I think it honestly, this scene by itself kind of changed the whole Shallan part of the story for me, and I appreciated it, enjoyed it a lot more ever since this page.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really cleverly like about it too is she says you have quite the mouth on you at times, and Shallan says at times you mean it's not there at others, which on the surface sounds kind of witty, right? But that's just the same witticism she gave to the ship captain in the first half of the book, where he said something about how beautiful she is, and said, "Oh, so there are times when I'm not beautiful," is what you're saying. That's like, it's the same thing. It's just, and I don't know if Sanderson did that on purpose. I think he kind of did. It seems to
Yeah,
me that like making a witticism that kind of is meant to sound repetitive, I think is part of this whole thing. And I totally agree with you. And John and Chad is saying the same thing, that the realization that Shallan is meant to be annoying at first made it better for me. Yeah. So Frenia says Shallan's all about dead dads, which that is another thing we learn about her, that
sure.
she's killed her father. And I suppose we're supposed to assume that he had a shard blade, and that's how she has it now, because we learn indirectly that she's got a shard blade. We have a slide on that a little bit later, but
Yeah, I think that was my assumption. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, say like this sort of joke, this exact sort of joke is like the cheapest sort of witticism, where it's like, oh, at times, really,
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way we speak. Okay, it's not funny. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it's the lowest form of observational humor.
yeah. It's like
Um,
puns.
yeah, but then like
Oh
the
wait,
thing
I
is that,
love puns.
yeah, me too. What are you talking about, Scott? But then the thing is, like, I feel like she actually gets funnier and better as the book goes on, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I
that's
agree with that.
yeah,
And she becomes really interesting in the fact that like I felt like in the first half we were supposed to be like enamored by how like cool, not cool, but like she's so clever and smart and like, and the second half really spends time getting to show her faults and what's wrong with her, and she gets totally hoodwinked by this assassin pretending to be a priest that wants to bang her.
yeah,
I just really like, we really dove into the depths of her character a little bit more, and I liked her a lot.
yeah.
So it's cool seeing her improve in that ways.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about our boy Kaladin surviving a high storm. Kaladin in the first half of this section devises a way to protect his bridge crew by turning the bridge on its side to protect it from arrows. It works great, but it throws the rest of the assault on a plateau in complete disarray and basically gets a bunch of people killed, and he feels like he failed again and he's depressed again, and then is punished and sentenced to the Almighty's judgment, which means he's chained outside during a high storm. And this part right here is when Teft and Rock wake up to see if he survived it, which of course he did, Matt. Of course he did.
Of course.
Rock charged around the side of a building. Other bridgemen left the barrack behind as Teft followed Rock, storming Horneater like a big lumbering chull. He actually believed. He thought they'd find the foolish young bridge leader alive. Probably figured they'd discover him having a nice cup of tea, relaxing in the shade with the Stormfather himself. And you don't believe? Teft asked himself, still looking down. If you don't, why are you following? But if you did believe, you'd look. You wouldn't stare at your feet. You'd look up and see. Could a man both believe and not believe at the same time? Teft stopped beside Rock and steeling himself, looked up at the wall of the barrack. There he saw what he'd expected and what he'd feared. The corpse looked like a hunk of slaughterhouse meat, skinned and bled. Was that a person? Kaladin's skin was sliced in 100 places, dribbles of blood mixing with rainwater running down the side of the building. The lad's body still hung by the ankles. His shirt had been ripped off. His bridgeman trousers were ragged. Ironically, his face was cleaner now than when they'd left him, washed by the storm. Teft had seen enough dead men on the battlefield to know what he was looking at. Poor lad, he thought, shaking his head at as the rest of Bridge 4 gathered around him, and Rock, quiet, horrified. You almost made me believe in you. Kaladin's eyes snapped open. The gathering bridgemen gasped. Several cursed and falling to the ground, splashed in the pools of rainwater. Kaladin drew in a ragged breath, wheezing, eyes staring forward, intense and unseeing. He exhaled, blowing flecks of bloody spittle all out over his lips. His hands, hanging below him, slipped open. Something dropped to the stones. The sphere Teft had given him. It splashed into a puddle and stopped there. It was done. No stormlight in it. What in the name of Kellic? Teft thought, kneeling. He left a sphere out in the storm, and it gathered stormlight. Held in Kaladin's hand, this one should have been fully infused. What had gone wrong? So, this is really wonderful, and I mean, this is the book basically really starts to make textual some of the stuff we talked about last week, that it was just kind of hinting at the fact that he's got the same kind of, I think it's called surge binding that our assassin had, but a kind where he doesn't really see he's doing it. And there's Sanderson like really like sprinkles in moments throughout the story before he really starts to face it textually that this is happening. Like there are all these kind of moments where Kaladin goes, huh, that's weird.
Yeah.
This sphere is done again. Like it happens like 4 times, I think, even before this moment, where it's not even Kaladin realizing it, this is Teft realizing it. And then it just kind of expands from there until our character learns about it. But I thought this was a really cool way of doing this. Like I didn't like, I knew the second he was chained up that the dude's not going to die, or at least I felt pretty sure about that. But I was interested to see how it was going to do it. And I was getting right to what Sylphrania is saying right now, is that it's not like he's just hanging out there perfectly unharmed. It's like he still almost died. He just didn't die. And that is like this power he has doesn't make him like unkillable, immortal type of stuff. It just protects him and heals him in places that other men would have definitely died.
Yeah, I think he had his spren defending him somewhat, and then also you could sort of hand wave and say the fact that he had the sphere with him allowed him to like channel the storm energy and use it to keep himself from dying, like keep
Yeah.
himself healed. But he doesn't really know how to do it properly. So yeah, I liked how it was done overall. I actually really liked the scene where we're actually with him as he's getting thrashed by the storm, and like you see that he's getting just like buffeted and slammed around, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, like he's not going to survive this for long.
Yeah.
And then we cut away from him, and we're like, well, I mean, I'm like 90% sure he lived, but like the book conveyed the violence of it enough that there is that shred of doubt about it. So
Yeah, and I mean, I love the writing here where it says the first time we actually see Kaladin, we see it through Tef's perspective, and he doesn't say Kaladin looked like a hunk of slaughterhouse meat. The corpse looked like a hunk of slaughterhouse meat.
yeah,
So we're in the perspective of this character that has utterly convinced themselves, despite the fact that they're hoping not, that he's dead. And so the first time Teft gets a look at him, he's not even Kaladin. He's the corpse first, and then Kaladin's skin was sliced in 100 places.
yeah, I do. So I just like overall that Kaladin is absolutely not the one to figure out that he has this power.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like I guess I just always like it when a character is made a bit less than perfect.
sure.
And if he had been the one to figure it out on his own, I guess that would have been fine. But it makes me just kind of like dumb old Kaladin,
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
oblivious to
He
to
he
yeah.
he is really oblivious to it. Did it ever
Uh-huh.
stretch your disbelief of how oblivious he is to it? I think we have to level set ourselves and remember we're reading a book in which we know that magic exists. So I think a character like probably like if weird shit started happening around you, like how many times would the weird shit have to happen before you go, "Oh, I clearly have some sort of magic power."
Yeah.
Like I think it would have to be a lot.
Yeah, I regret that I don't remember who said this in the Discord, but somebody said like, um, if I get a bunch of dud LEDs in a row, I don't assume that I'm siphoning the magical energy out of the LEDs.
Yeah,
I just figure it's bad luck.
sure. Yeah, I think that was
Or
Sylphrena actually.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, um,
Um,
which made a lot of sense to me, honestly.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I think I think it works and it fits with this character who like he's he's a type of person that's so consistently worried about everyone else around him that he doesn't really pay much attention to himself in that regard, you know. So I think like especially
Yeah,
since he thinks a lot of this part of the book is him convinced that he's cursed in some way or being punished, and so he would never think of anything like a power like as a good thing.
sure, and really, like it's also not intuitive for him to suck the power out of it. So even if he had
Sure.
this niggling suspicion, it takes him a while to figure out how to
Yeah.
get the power out of it. It all works for me. It all works.
Yeah, and Sanderson has given us Teft, a character that can kind of coach him through this. Even though, like, what I love is that Teft is not some like wise old guy who has all the answers to this thing. He just knows like barely enough of it to be able to recognize it. It's not like he can coach him through how to do it. He's just like, yeah, I think you're this thing. I don't. That's all I got for
Yeah.
you.
Right. You should be able to fly, I guess, probably.
Yeah.
So try that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Right. I like how it's done.
Sure.
It's actually very different from Mistborn, right? We've decided we can talk a little bit about Mistborn.
Sure.
Mistborn has the classic mentor who knows everything about how to do the magic thing and
Yeah.
is going to teach the other person how to do the magic thing. This has no mentor. There's no mentor at all. It's all figured out.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's a fun way to do it too.
Yeah. John says he's not Obi-Wan Teft. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things I think, like thematically, I want to think about through a lot of Sanderson's work is this idea of a man being becoming like worshipped.
Uh,
Because like a lot of Mistborn was about that. And we have a character like Kaladin here who survives the storm and kind of becomes a living legend, a miracle, to the point where they're not just respecting him. These not just his bridge crew, but a lot of the other bridge crews like revere him in a certain way. And I
yeah.
think it's interesting that is a motif that Sanderson has circled around multiple times, and I think we see at the end of this book that the Almighty, the God that everyone is talking about here, doesn't seem to be like a. He doesn't really refer to himself as a god. in the way that we would expect.
Yeah.
So it could be another example of someone of great power just being like being deified in this way while not actually being quote unquote a god.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on this page here that deals with faith,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a favorite theme of Sanderson's, I think,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
he's Teft is like kind of sneering at Rock for believing, and at the same time is like, but you either believe or you want to believe at least, and kind of entertaining the contradiction of belief.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think that's true. I think when it comes to matters of faith, you can definitely believe and not believe at the same time.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I like Sanderson is a man of faith. He's religious, but I appreciate that his books don't just take this stuff for granted, right? Like he's not writing from the perspective of like obviously God is real and obviously all the stuff and you should have faith and you should believe. He's examining it, he's exploring it, he's questioning it. And I find that very fascinating. I really enjoy reading that kind of stuff. Like Martin Scorsese is like the most questioning Catholic ever.
uh-huh.
Like almost every single one of his movies is about him really questioning, examining his faith, and I really think that's what Sanderson is doing here as well.
Yeah. I mean, I find all of this stuff very relatable. It
Mm-hmm.
all reminds me of things that I've gone through myself. So
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
cool.
Kirkusan here says it's interesting how Kelsier actively cultivated it being his deification, and Kaladin is just kind of resigned at best. Which, yeah, that is very true. I think Kaladin, what he cares about is protecting the people, and he'll do that in any way he needs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. All right, next slide. So to prove a point, Yasna leads Shallan out into the city in the middle of the night. They are jumped by murderous thieves, and Yasna uses her soulcaster to brutally murder all four of them. Shallan is disturbed, and Yasna sees it as a lesson. Does that make it right? Yasna said, leaning forward. Do you condone what the men were planning to do? Of course not, but that doesn't mean what you did right. That doesn't make what you did right either. And yet, those men are off the street. The people of this city are that much safer. The issue that Taravangian has been so worried about has been solved, and no more theater goers will fall to those thugs. How many lives did I just save? I know how many you just took, Shallan said. And through the power of something that should be holy, philosophy in action, an important lesson for you. You did all this just to prove a point, Shallan said softly. You did this to prove to me that you could. Damnation, Yasna. How could you do something like that? Yasna didn't reply. Shallan stared at the woman, searching for emotion in those expressionless eyes. Stormfather. Did I ever really know this woman? Who is she, really? Yasna leaned back, watching the city pass. I did not do this just to prove a point, child. I have been feeling for some time that I took advantage of His Majesty's hospitality. He doesn't realize how much trouble he could face for allying himself with me. Besides, men like those. There was something in her voice, an edge Shallan had never heard before. What was done to you? Shallan wondered with horror. And who did it? Regardless, Yasna continued, tonight's actions have come about because I chose this path, not because of anything I felt you needed to see. However, the opportunity also presented a chance for instruction, for questions. Am I a monster, or am I a hero? Did I just slaughter four men, or did I stop four murderers from walking the streets? Does one deserve to have evil done to her by consequence of putting herself where evil can reach her? Did I have a right to defend myself? Or was I just looking for an excuse to end lives? I don't know, Shallan whispered. You will spend the next week researching it and thinking on it. If you wish to be a scholar, a true scholar who changes the world, then you will need to face questions like this. There will be times when you must make decisions that churn your stomach, Shallan Devar. I'll have you ready to make those decisions.
So I really like this. I mean, this is basically the book diving into morality, and I think a lot of book three of these five, and arguably the book as a whole, is dealing with a lot of these questions that Yasna is asking Shallan here. Because in Kaladin's story, we see he learns that his father did steal the spheres, that those were not given to him by the Bright Lord, that he took them. We learn like we are dealing with the ethics of choices like these,
Yeah.
of are you right or wrong? Like a lot of this book, I think, is exploring this idea of war and violence and like conquering and advancement through power and physical force. And so I find it very fitting that we kind of take this moment here where with these two scholars and they just directly like confront those themes that we see kind of woven through all of the other characters in the book.
Yeah, I found this to be really a very mature approach on ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm really going to force you to confront the question of whether this was right or wrong and why exactly, because and I love, I don't know if you pulled a slide on it, but like I love the consequence of this is that Shalon goes through all of these different kind of ethical theories and how they all sort of have different things to say about it
Mm-hmm.
because they all play on different intuitions that we have about, what makes things right and wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also love this idea that Yasna says here, like really being a scholar is being someone who is capable of action based on things that they learn. It's not a sterile and academic pursuit. It's you learn enough and knowledge makes you powerful, and then you can use that power to make change.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, if you, you and in which case you'd better really know what you're talking about.
Sure,
I think
sure.
that's beautiful. I love that actually.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, knowledge is both like a blessing and a curse in that regard, right? That you can't just collect it; you must use it, or else you're just wasting it.
Yeah.
I didn't pull a slide on it, but Shallan's basic answer back to Yasna here is that she thinks she was within the law and right to do it, but morally wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I love the debate they have about the difference between being right and morally correct. It's really fascinating. Like they're not. It's not just we're not just like hand waving away what she did here. It's complicated, and that's a lot of what I think this book is doing. Like what Dalinar does at the end of the story is complicated. What Kaladin is doing with the big action set piece of this book is something that I think we're kind of supposed to feel torn on. Like in the one hand, it's impressive and cool as shit. In the other, like we're learning about these peoples that they're fighting against. Like throughout the whole book, we're learning about the Parshmen and the Parshendi and what humanity has done to these people. And so it just like nothing in this. There's no like clear, straightforward feeling about any of this.
Yeah. I like that you connected Kaladin's father stealing the spheres, because I didn't really make that connection to being really the same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really is, right? Like, because stealing is wrong, but like in this horribly restrictive and oppressive class-based society, maybe stealing is not quite as wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, but also it's not just a slam dunk, right? Like it's,
Sure. Yeah.
yep, that was theft. That was
Yeah.
theft of a lot of money too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it has consequences. Like
yeah,
not like does that money belong to you? Do you deserve it? Yeah. But what are the consequences of you doing that? Because the consequences of you doing that are your brother gets conscripted by the leader of the town because he hates your family, and then he ends up dying, and you end up joining the army as well, and it sets you on this path. Just like this here, the consequence of it, what Yasna has done here, regardless of whether she's right or not, is Shallan decides to steal the Soulcaster, which she had before this moment decided not to do. She had basically resigned herself. She was like, "Okay, I can't do it. I tried. I can't do it. I just can't bring myself to do this thing." And it's this moment, her disgust with Yasna in this moment, and the speech about ethics here, the speech about making decisions that churn your stomach, that make her decide to do it, and that's what kind of sets this story going forward as well.
yeah.
Um,
I thought that was really great from like a plotting perspective too,
mm-hmm.
because I was thinking like, man, if Shalon actually goes through it and steals this thing, I'm gonna just write her off as a character, because that's just such a like a selfish, awful thing to do. But
Yeah,
then
yeah,
this situation is created, and you're like, you know what? I can kind of get it. I can
yeah,
kind of get it in this context.
yeah. I mean, but how? Here's my question for you: what is the difference between stealing a soulcaster from a rich noble and stealing a bucket of money from a rich noble so you can go to school? Like,
Good question.
Like,
One is right and one is morally wrong.
it's a cop out. But no, I mean, I think the book is wanting us to kind of consider these questions, and I think that's why like book 3 is very much the Shallan and Kaladin um, story that's circling around the central idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shallan is a rich noble, sure, but she's destitute and in trouble. Like they're running out of money. They owe a bunch of people money. They're screwed. They're screwed.
Right. And also the reason she steals the Soulcaster is ultimately not for wealth. It's like a kind of like she doesn't deserve to have this. She's
Mm-hmm.
abusing this powerful thing, and I'm actually doing the world a favor. And she does kind of do it on the spur of the moment too, which I think also helps you accept it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
All right, so let's talk about a horny priest. Shallan is making time with Cabsol. I don't care how
Capsule. Yeah,
Cabsol,
capsule.
the ardent who definitely wants to jump her bones. Let's read about them here. I am an ardent, he said. It is my duty and calling to be truthful at all times. Of course, she said. I'm always truthful as well. So full of truth, in fact, that sometimes it squeezes the lies right out of my lips. There isn't a place for them inside, you see. He laughed heartily. Shallan Davar, I can't imagine anyone as sweet as yourself uttering a single untruth. Then, for the sake of your sanity, I'll keep them coming in pairs, she smiled. I'm having a terrible time, and this food is awful. You've just disproven an entire body of lore and mythology surrounding the eating of truthberry jam. Good, Shallan said. Jam should not have lore or mythology. It should be sweet, colorful, and delicious. Like young ladies, I presume. Brother Cabsol, she blushed again. That wasn't at all appropriate. And yet you smile. I can't help it, she said. I'm sweet, colorful, and delicious. You have the colorful part right, he said, obviously amused at her deep blush. And the sweet part. Can't speak for your deliciousness. Cabsol, she exclaimed, though she wasn't entirely shocked. She'd once told herself that he was interested in her only in order to protect her soul, but that was getting more and more difficult to believe. He stopped by at least once a week. He chuckled at her embarrassment, but that only made her blush further. Stop it, she held her hand up in front of her eyes. My face must be the color of my hair. You shouldn't say such things. You're a man of religion. But I'm still a man, Shallan.
Excellent reading. Excellent reading. Oh,
This is the only capsule slide I pulled, so I want to kind of use this slide to talk about the character. I mean, we can talk about the assassination attempt. We can talk about this guy in general and his role in this book.
yeah. Kyrgyzstan says laughing at that joke proves how besotted he is. Which I think that's a fun jumping off point because I do believe that he fell for her. I don't think it was all a ruse, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
Because he goes out of his way to save her.
Yeah, but not like he goes out of his way to save her, but not like at the expense of saving himself. Like he prioritizes himself still first, tries to.
Tries to, but yeah.
But I think I do think he fell in love with her. Like I think this, like, we talk about the witticisms of this book and how it's not that witty. I think this is actually just like a very kind of cute conversation. I just think it's hilarious that this guy's like a priest, and like we've really established like how strict this religion is, and like the first time I really appreciate what Sanderson does with Capsule and like the slow roll of his horniness.
Uh-huh.
It starts like he walks up to the line a few times, and this is really, I think, the first part where he really starts just walking over it to the point where you're just like, whoa, dude.
Yeah, where's this going?
Yeah. I think that was really a really satisfying arc for him over the course of the book, is like seeing like where you're like you're off put a little bit, but you kind of resign yourself to just be like, maybe he really just wants to quit the priesthood or whatever. But no, of course we learn he's an assassin, and I don't think he's not an ardent like at all, right? I think 567 is asking that. He's not really an ardent. He's pretending to be an ardent the whole time.
I guess, yeah. It's I guess I wasn't clear on whether he was an Ardent who had been co-opted or whether the Ardents are actually trying to kill Yasna, or like what exactly is going on there.
Mhm.
Maybe this was explained and I just forgot.
Yeah. I think Lorias is quitting the priesthood even allowed. I think in the world of this it is, but like there are pretty good big consequences for it. Like you can, but like society will not look at you well.
Like there was a reason you had to be a priest in the first place anyway. So,
Yeah, yeah. My Catholic priest growing up quit because he fell in love with a woman and
oh
said,
man,
"Okay,
that's
I'm gonna go do that."
he's breaking all the rules. He's not
Yeah,
supposed to.
yeah.
Yeah,
So basically, Father Jonathan was
just like
just
this
like
guy.
Brother Capsule. Yeah,
Yeah, I hope he seduced her with jam.
yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how many hours I took the song Space Jam and made lyrics in my head related to Priest Jam.
Okay.
It,
Yeah, I you sent me some of this and I had to be like, Scott, I'm sorry, I don't have Space Jam memorized the way I'm supposed to.
See,
Uh,
it's a play on words because he was feeding her a lot of jam,
I
and
get
then
it.
I made it also like jizz. That was
God.
that's what I did. So
Okay, it's good.
let's move
Let's
on.
move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's talk about the assassination attempt though, because I mean, I think this is just one of those things that's left dangling at the end of the story, right? Um, because we don't know who sent this assassin. We don't know anything about this. We learn that the king of this city was the one that was hiring Zeth, right?
Yeah.
That's his name, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not a family book club. I checked the no children on the thing when I went live, so no.
But yes, we really don't know what like who the conspirators are that are
Yeah,
behind
yeah.
all of the things. There are conspirators who gave Shallan's father his soul caster. There are conspirators trying to kill Yasna. There's I don't know. There's a lot of mysteries, right? There's the symbol-headed creatures. We don't really know what they are. There's
Mm-mm.
Spren. We get the feeling that's kind of related to stuff somehow. That
The Spren seem like one of the most important things in
yeah,
existence.
we learn offhand that they change their properties in response to your knowledge about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is like, yep, okay,
I didn't pull that slide because I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do with that.
yep. No, exactly. There's nothing really to say about it other than like,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna learn more about Spren later. I got it.
I guess the question I have for you then is, did you find this portion of Shallan's story to be engaging? Like the we kind of see there's a lot of arguments that he's making about religion, and we kind of see the the whole thing with the formation of the cities and how they're seemingly forming. Um, I forget what the term is called when you like use frequency to shape sand in certain ways. Totally forgot that was called.
So do I.
But the cities seem to be done, and that's like his argument for why religion is real. I wonder how much of that was just like bullshit to get close versus this whatever whoever hired this guy, whoever he was, he legitimately believes in this thing.
See, that's why I'm a bit surprised at people saying he wasn't really an Ardent because there's that point where he gets like really angry, like genuinely angry, and like loses his cool and makes Shallan a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And that's just him revealing his actual feelings about all of this.
yeah. I mean, maybe
Um,
he's not an ardent, but you could still be pretty hardcore religious in this
yeah,
world. It seems like a very religion dominated society. So
sure, but at the very least, he does seem to know a lot about the religion and care about it.
sure. So
Um, I,
Freyna says they thought he was a real ardent, just the church denied it after he died. Yeah, that would make sense to me.
yeah, but I mean, I think like the cool thing about the cities and everything is like sacred geometry is like a fun thing from the real world where
Hmm.
like geometry is sort of mysterious and weird. Like why is it this way? Why are the rules this way? Why is it that when you do this, this and this, you get this consequence and
Hmm.
it's aesthetically pleasing? Like
Right.
it's one of those things where it's like, well, if anything is going to be an argument for religion, I guess this might as well be.
Sure. Well,
Um,
I find it interesting because like you have an author like bring an atheist character into their book, and uh, I don't think like I think Sanderson treats Yasna with a lot of respect, despite the fact that she's specifically a non-believer. for like all the ways that are cool is that she finds belief in this kind of stuff to be the absence of asking questions, and that's kind of why she rejects it. And this guy is attempting to prove the existence of God via facts and science, and I think a lot of devout uh, Christians or just spiritual people or whatever would just go like, "That's you don't do that. That's like that's not the point. Like to try to physically, literally prove the existence of stuff. Like
Yeah.
faith is a cornerstone of the idea. Like you don't need to prove it." And
I
I just find it interesting that he's exploring these ideas.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, he's really being fair to like a number of different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
because there's definitely the kind of religious person who doesn't need that at all, and then there's the kind of religious person who really does need to have some kind of rational grounding for their faith.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, John a few minutes ago said that they really appreciated that Yasna is not a straw atheist. Her you know, her portrayal is very fair. It's like, yeah, these are all very very good responses to, and like a realistic internal life for this person, which I think is good, because I honestly felt like the portrayal of the atheist character in Mistborn was not perfect, not super offensive either. But anyway, I like this a lot. I like everything
Which
he's
one are
doing
you
with
talking
this.
about?
I don't remember the character's name now, but I remember saying this during the book club on that book. I just don't remember what the character was now.
I can't. I'm trying to. You don't mean Sazed, do you? Because
No, I mean well, says it sort of, because he was struggling at a certain point, but that's not who I was thinking of. I don't remember who I was thinking of. I
okay,
literally just remember that I said this.
okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and also like this was the kind of thing that actually kind of brought me around on Shallan's whole part of the book, and like by the time we got to around this point, I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this now.
Yeah.
I'm no longer enjoying Kaladin a lot, and wish we could get past the Shallan chapters.
I will say Sanderson does this thing where, like at the end of book 3, we just leave Shallan behind until book 5, until the very end of the book, and like he does this twice in this book. Like when book 1 we have Shallan chapters, and then book 2 bye bye. Book 3 we have Shallan chapters. Book 4 bye bye again. And I just like I wonder if there was a way to space these out a little more.
Uh-huh.
We leave character behind for so long, or not character. It's literally just her. Like everyone else, we have it's Shallan and Kaladin, and then we say bye Shallan, and then it's Kaladin and Dalinar.
True. I didn't really notice that, but yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
Cool.
All right, let's move on. We're
Let's move
taking
on
too long.
to
We're only
yeah.
on like slide 5.
We need to pick up the pace, I guess. Kaladin is on the verge of giving up again. He's realized the truth. Bridgman's purpose is literally to die. He cannot save them all, and doesn't know what to do. Here he repeats the first motto of the Radiance, trying to parse its meaning. So why fight? I told myself that I would try one last time, but I failed before I began. There's no saving them. Doesn't the fight itself mean anything? Not if you're destined to die. He hung his head. Sigzil's words echoed in his head. Life before death. Strength before weakness. Journey before destination. Kaladin looked up at the crack of sky, like a faraway river of pure blue water. Life before death. What did the saying mean? That men should seek life before seeking death? That was obvious. Or did it mean something else? That life came before death? Again, obvious. And yet the simple words spoke to him. Death comes, they whispered. Death comes to all. But life comes first. Cherish it. Death is the destination, but the journey, that is life. That is what matters. A cold wind blew through the corridor of stone, washing over him, bringing crisp, fresh scents and blowing away the stink of rotting corpses. Nobody cared for the bridgemen. Nobody cared for those at the bottom, with the darkest eyes. And yet, that wind seemed to whisper to him over and over, life before death, life before death, live before you die. His foot hit something. He bent down and picked it up, a small rock. He could barely make it out in the darkness. He recognized what was happening to him, this melancholy, this sense of despair. It had taken him often when he'd been younger, most frequently during the weeks of the weeping when the sky was hidden by clouds. During those times, Tian had cheered him up, helped him pull out of his despair. Tian had always been able to do that. Once he'd lost his brother, he dealt with these periods of sadness more awkwardly. He'd become the wretch, not caring, but also not despairing. It had seemed better not to feel at all, as opposed to feeling pain. I'm going to fail them, Kaladin thought, squeezing his eyes shut. Why try?
So I pulled this because I really just really liked that the book is exploring this idea with Kaladin, because basically what the book is exploring here is, without saying it, is depression, right?
Yeah.
This melancholy, this sense of despair, this moment where he just stops feeling anything at all. It's not pain, it's not sadness, it's just kind of nothing.
Yeah, numbness.
Yeah, and I love that, like, this the book is going to go here with its protagonist, its fantasy archetype protagonist, who is just like suffering. And in here we have all these words, these important words that we kind of learn later in the story. These words have a certain amount of power. These are the words of the Radiants. This, we know they have, I think, 5 mottos. This is the first one: life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. And we have our protagonist here hearing the words, interpreting them, and saying, yeah, okay, life before death, live before you die. And even having these words and knowing them and sussing out the meaning of them doesn't like make him feel better. It, like, he still at the end of this thing, it says, I'm going to fail them. Why try? Like, and I think he eventually gets there not long after this, but it's just like, it's very easy to say something like, you got to live before you die.
Right.
And like,
yeah,
okay.
Right.
Okay. That's great. What do I,
That-
how do I
I
do that?
I think
I'm a bridge man.
yeah, that's one of the really interesting things about these like pieces of wisdom, is that like every piece of true deep wisdom sounds like just an utter vapid platitude
Mhm.
until you really understand it. And then you're like, "Oh my God, it's amazing. It's life-changing." But like
Mhm.
just hearing it is not life-changing. You really have to learn the lesson yourself.
Right.
And
Right.
then I think then after you've done that, then you can actually kind of hang on to that piece of wisdom as like a touchstone, and it ceases to become vacuous to you.
Sure. Sure.
And I think what kind of happens in this book actually is, with Kaladin and with Dalinar in different ways, they both kind of come to a place of understanding the wisdom within some of the things that they try to believe or want to believe, or want to become. Um, and yeah, I mean, basically, I agree. Like I've said several times, like I was really impressed with kind of the maturity and nuance with which the book treated a certain thing. In this case, I'm impressed with how it treated this character struggling with depression. It felt very
Mhm.
realistic.
It
And
did, and it doesn't oversimplify it. It doesn't. It gives it its fair due. It describes it in what I felt is a pretty accurate way. And you know, it is a little. People in chat are talking about how it feels like a little jarring to see him call it the wretch, based on another book that we're reading called Ward. Yeah, same with me. That
uh,
jumped out at me too. But like, this is, I love that he'd become the wretch, not caring but also not despairing. And that's just what depression feels like. It's just nothing. It's just nothing. It's
yep,
just, yeah, it's just, you're not feeling anything.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful. But yeah, I mean, like, this is, I look back at Mistborn and I liked those books a lot. I really liked those books, but I think by comparison, these characters are more complex. They're deeper. They're struggling with things that are, I think, a little more complicated than the likes of Vin, who I enjoyed. I enjoyed her as a protagonist, but I think, like, struggling with trust versus struggling with constant failure and depression and, like, responsibility. Like, Kaladin has so much going on, and I really love him as a character.
yeah. Cool.
All right, let's go back to Shaolin. So back with Shaolin, she's been kind of doing some weird stuff lately, Matt. Like, there's these moments where she'll go into like a trance while drawing, and see these weird symbol creatures, and she does it while she's drawing her favorite priest crush, and freaks the hell out and runs back into her room. And then this is when she draws again and accidentally ends up soul casting. She felt a growing chill, a rising terror. She had to know. She scrambled to pull out charcoal, then blinked and began to sketch her room. Ceiling first, 4 straight lines, down the walls, lines the corners. Her fingers kept moving, drawing, depicting the pad itself held before her, safe hands shrouded and bracing the pad from behind. And then on. to the beings standing around her, twisted symbols unconnected to their uneven shoulders. Those not heads had unreal angles, surfaces that melded in weird, impossible ways. The creature at the front was reaching two smooth fingers towards Shaolin, just inches from the right side of the sketchpad. Oh, Stormfather, Shaolin thought, charcoal pencil falling still. The room was empty, yet depicted right in front of her was an image of it crowded full of sleek figures. They were close enough that she should be able to feel them breathing, if they breathed. Was there a chill in the room? Hesitantly, terrified but unable to stop herself, Shaolin dropped her pencil and raised her free hand to the right. And felt something. She screamed then, jumping to her feet on her bed, dropping the pad, backing against the wall. Before she could consciously think of what she was doing, she was struggling with her sleeve, trying to get the soulcaster out. It was the only thing she had resembling a weapon. No, that was stupid. She didn't know how to use it. She was helpless. Except... Storms, she thought, frantic. I can't use that. I promised myself. She began the process anyway, 10 heartbeats to bring forth the fruit of her sin, the proceeds of her most horrific act. She was interrupted midway through by a voice, uncanny, yet distinct. What are you? She clutched her hand to her chest, losing her balance on the soft bed, falling to her knees on the rumpled blanket. She put one hand to the side, steadying herself on the nightstand, fingers brushing the large glass goblet that sat there. What am I? She whispered. I'm terrified. This is true. The bedroom transformed around her. I love this scene. I think it's really cool. And then she transformed to like weird bead land, where
Yeah.
she's just like Beadville.
I don't know. I don't know how to interpret any of that, but I will say on the level of like this scene, it's just a fantastic scene. Like
Yeah.
it's terrifying. The idea that this conceit that she draws things and then there's weird stuff in the pictures is just a great horror. Like it's a horror thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a horror concept, and she reaches out and she feels something there, and you're like, holy shit, what's gonna happen now?
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. I love it.
It is. It really is. Like, and I mean, there's a lot to talk about here, right? We got to talk about Beadsville, which Jess correctly points out is called Shadesmar, but we really don't know about that yet,
What that means,
except
yeah.
that's a name. She soul casts in this moment. She turns the goblet into blood and then slices herself open to. That's her brilliant plan here is, oh, the blood is not me turning something into blood. That's my blood.
Yeah.
I'm saying bead, not bees.
The beam.
The chat is going crazy.
Panned? Are you saying pan? So yeah. I don't know anything about the Beatland. I don't know, like, I mean, obviously, certain ideas jump to your mind, but we're not meant to understand yet. You know?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what soul casting is as compared to surge binding, which is I think what Kaladin can do, right? The breathing in of the light, the storm light,
Yeah.
is what he does. This is different, a different kind of power. Like, is this the bad power? I'm trying to put everything in a dichotomy, which is probably not fair because it seems like there's more than just two. There's so many different things going on here, but it's a different kind of power.
Yeah. There's the Spren seem to be connected to the storm energy, which is connected to surge binding. These weird symbol creature things seem to be connected to
the beads,
the beads and soul casting, and possibly the Parshendi. I don't know why I say that even. The Parshendi, like the Parshendi are the whatchamacallit, the Voidbringers.
yes.
Spoilers.
For this book, spoilers.
Right. For this book we're talking about. Maybe they are related to one of these powers, maybe not. I don't know. I guess I think they might be, though. I think they might be.
Mm-hmm. I don't. Yeah, I don't. We don't know, and we're not supposed to know. It's one of those things that's left open.
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything else smart to say about this because we're not. It's a secret. We'll know after we finish the entire series.
I do think, like, I don't know what to make of these twisted symbol people, because like if the Spren in Syl are what Kaladin uses to surge bind whatever, that seems good because I like Syl. She seems pretty neat. We learn later she's an honor spren, right? Um, these creepy symbol people seem much more ominous and dark. And
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that information. Like I'm tempted to just go, oh, this is bad news, but I don't know because I like Yasna and Shaolin, and I don't want
Right.
them to be bad people. But
Right. Well,
yeah,
I think Sanderson is also someone who has played before with the idea of just tricking us
yeah, true,
into
true.
thinking, oh yeah, these guys, this is bad because there's nobody with nails slammed through their eye sockets in this book, but the creepy symbol people definitely do seem creepy.
Yeah, I
So
mean metaphorical eyes slammed with
yeah,
things.
true.
Sure.
All right, moving on.
I guess before we move on, let's talk about the fact that she killed her dad and took his sword, and she just this is the first time in I think 600-700 pages that she like this is the first and I think only time that she mentions like not even directly mentions the shard blade, but like mentions of it.
Yeah, and she really does seem like it's interesting how it's portrayed, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she almost portrays it as if she did it on purpose,
Yeah,
but that's hard to believe. But then again, who knows,
I mean the proceeds of her most horrific act, right? That's
right?
such a distinct verbiage.
Well, like I thought that you could give a shard blade away. I mean, clearly you can because that happens later.
Yeah, it seems like
So
all you do is like slam it down into the rock so it doesn't disappear when you set it down, and then whoever picks it up next gets it. Seems
yeah,
like that's what happened.
yeah, I believe so. So I'm just it's interesting that she even still has it. Like she didn't give it to one of her brothers who could have used it for some kind of military,
Hey, maybe they
you know.
don't know.
Well, I think they don't
Yeah,
actually. I think that's the
yeah,
that's why.
yeah. Um, I, like I think one of the things that this second half of this book, and I think a lot of the book is going to deal with, is the giving slash taking of shard blades, and I think that's something that's actually super important to a lot of what the story is doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right, let's
Cool.
move on.
Next one.
So Frenia is mad that you said let the man have the shard blade.
Well, the man is going to be able to use it in war.
in this society, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just going to move on now. Yeah.
You've trapped yourself in a corner.
Yeah. Right.
Run.
Yeah. Yeah. So we flash back to Kaladin's recent past 1 year ago, where he's fighting for Bright Lord Amaram. Kaladin successfully kills a shard bearer, but is so disgusted by Light Eyes, he refuses to take ownership of it, giving it to one of his men. Amaram refuses to allow this to happen, kills Kaladin's men, enslaves him, and takes the blade and plate for himself. Everyone else fled, including my honor guard. The two men closest to the door looked down, ashamed, but you charged in for the attack. Why? I didn't really think about it, sir. Amaram seemed displeased by the answer. Your name is Kaladin, is it? Yes, Bright Lord. From Hearthstone, remember? Amaram frowned, looking confused. Your cousin Rashon is city lord there. He sent my brother into the army when you came recruiting. I joined my brother. Ah, yes, Amaram said. I believe I remember you. He didn't ask after Tian. You still haven't answered my question. Why attack? It wasn't for the Shardblade. You rejected that. Yes, sir. To the side, the Storm Warden raised his eyebrows, as if he hadn't believed that Kaladin had turned down the shards. The soldier holding the Shardblade kept glancing at it in awe. Why? Amram said. Why did you reject it? I have to know. I don't want it, sir. Yes, but why? Because it would make me one of you. Because I can't look at that weapon and not see the faces of the men its wielder slaughtered so offhandedly. Because... I can't really answer that, sir, Kaladin said, sighing. The Storm Warden walked over to the room's brazier, shaking his head. He began warming his hands. Look, Kaladin said, those shards are mine. Well, I said give them to Korib. He's the highest ranked of my soldiers and the best fighter among them. The other three would understand. Besides, Korib would take care of them once he was Light Eyes. Amaram looked at Korib, then nodded to his attendants. One closed the window shutters, the others pulled out swords, then began moving toward the four remaining members of Kaladin's squad. Kaladin yelled, leaping forward, but two of the officers had positioned themselves close to him. One slammed a punch into Kaladin's gut as soon as he started moving. He was so surprised that it connected directly, and he gasped. No.
Man, poor Kaladin. Everyone in chat has just ruined Amaram's name for me forever. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, look. Whoa, Black Betty, Amaram. You don't
Mm,
know that song, do you?
no, don't
Okay.
know that
Well,
song.
you're lucky then. You're
Okay,
lucky.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this kind of. I think the next three slides are actually a continuation of this idea, Matt. This idea of how much this book is dealing with these shard blades. I mean, these are like to compare back to Game of Thrones, which had powerful legendary swords of their own. This is the same thing, but like uber,
Yeah,
like
magic. Yeah,
not just like it's a cool sword that has status. This is status with like a power so great that it just can change the tide of a battlefield single-handedly. And again and again and again throughout the story, we're dealing with the ways in which people acquire these things, take them, give them, steal them. And I think it's really fascinating because like this is the greatest power in the book we've seen. Basically, there's nothing more powerful than these things we've seen. Like it's crazy how it's crazy, and people are taking them, people are stealing them. I think you can kind of line the characters up on who gives the power away freely versus takes the power for their own type of stuff.
yeah, I like that. I like how Toby calls it a weapon of medium destruction.
Five
It's
six
good.
seven says they change your eye color so you become a noble. Have we actually seen that happen in the book? I don't think
I don't.
so. Like
I don't think so.
they're told that, right? That's the story. Is like, oh, if you manage to kill a shard bearer on the field, um, you will get awarded the weapon and then will become a noble. That smells like bullshit to me.
Right. I mean, this is the one case where it kind of almost happened, and Amaram is like, nah,
Yeah,
nah.
right.
So
I don't believe this world would ever actually let a normal soldier keep it, regardless of if they actually managed to slay one of these guys.
like,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Like I feel like if Kaladin had taken it and ostentatiously been like in front of a lot of people, like, yep, I did it. I have the
mhm.
Star Blade now. Then they might have let him keep it. But the way it actually went down, they could cover it up, and so they did,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
I mean, I think like the only way I think they'd be able to keep it, yeah, is if they just like grab it and say, "Okay, I have it now," and try to take it away from me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Good luck
Exactly.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I just like I love that this is like this myth that every soldier in this army is aware of. That's this possibility, and then we see that our protagonist has actually done it. But unlike a lot of other fantasy series, which would give him the cool magic weapon, it doesn't. He rejects it, and it is part of him rejecting it that like is seen as a betrayal that gets his men killed. Although I still believe that was just going to happen always.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny because I was like so sure that this character was going to end up with the Shard Blade by the end of this book, and I was like pleasantly surprised that we then learned that he had a shot at one and
yeah,
turned it down. Yeah, I thought that
yeah.
was great.
Well, and not only that, but we're negative. Not only are we not plus one shard blade in this book, we're minus one of
Yeah.
our hero characters.
Yeah, right, exactly. I actually think that like that's way more fun and interesting than just like, and then the good guys got more power up and level 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of what the book is doing is these are the cool badass weapons of the story, but I don't think we're supposed to be like, fuck yeah, like let's
Right.
get him.
Yeah. Get that sword that makes you go into like a bloodlust frenzy.
Right, right. And I think this is a great way to transition to our next slide here because this is one of the high storm visions that Dalinar has where he witnesses the recreants, the moment that the Radiants betrayed humanity and walked away from their doodle. They doodled away from their duty. So this is a pretty big moment here. The Radiants were still distant, though they'd stopped within bowshot. Transfixed by the beautiful figures, Dalinar slowed, then stopped about 100 feet away. One knight stepped ahead of his companions, his brilliant cape a rich blue. His shard blade of rippling steel had intricate carvings along the center. He held it towards the keep for a moment. Then he drove it point first into the stone plain. Dalinar blinked. The shard bearer removed his helm, exposing a handsome head with blonde hair and pale skin, light as that of a man of Shinovar. He tossed the helm to the ground beside his blade. It rolled slightly as the shard bearer made fists in his gauntlets, arms at his side. He opened his palms wide, and the gauntlets fell free to the rocky ground. He turned his shard plate falling off his body, breastplate dropping free, greaves slipping off. Underneath he wore a rumpled blue uniform. He stepped free of his boot-like sabatons and continued to walk away. Shard plate and shard blade, the most precious treasures any man could own, tossed to the ground and abandoned like refuse. The others began to follow suit, hundreds of men and women driving shard blades into the stone, then removing their plate. The sound of metal hitting stone came like rain, then like thunder. Dalinar found himself running forward. The door behind him opened and some curious soldiers left the keep. Dalinar reached the shard blades. They sprouted from the rock like glittering silver trees, a forest of weapons. They glowed softly in a way his own shard blade never had, but as he dashed among them, their light started to fade. A terrible feeling struck him, a sense of immense tragedy, of pain and betrayal. Stopping where he stood, he gasped, hand to his chest. What was happening? What was that dreadful feeling, that screaming he swore he could almost hear? The Radiants. They walked away from their discarded weapons. They all seemed individuals now, each walking alone despite the crowd. I love this scene. I love this scene so much.
Yeah. So just to put it all together, and maybe to help me, these are the folks who, at the very beginning of the prologue or the prelude or whatever, decided they weren't going to fight anymore.
No. Those were the heralds.
Okay, what are the Radiants?
The Radiants are the soldiers of the heralds.
So are those two events related then?
Nah, we don't know. I don't know.
All right.
So well, the heralds are 10 men and women, I think, men and women that are, the prelude says, is going through some kind of cycle with the Desolations, and 9 of them decide collectively to give up on that and they fuck off. One of the things the heralds say is, well, they'll have the Radiance still.
Yes, but the Radiance still at this point. And so now they don't have the Radiance anymore. Now correct. The Radiance have also given up. So
the heralds left them. The Radiance betrayed them, and so they're all alone. And I think what we're meant to take from this scene is that all the shard plate and the shard blades that the people of this world have now are taken from this moment, where they leave them behind, and people just go grab them and then start like killing each other over them immediately. Like it's horrifying. Like, and again, goes back to this idea of here's the most powerful weaponry and armor in the world, and it's tainted with like the original acquisition of this stuff is people just greedily grabbing it and then fighting each other to get more of it.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because, you know, the heralds quit because they were basically being tortured constantly, and it was horrible for them.
Yeah.
We don't actually know why the Radiants quit.
No, we don't.
And it's interesting because it gives a, you know, there's the possibility that, like, well, maybe they did it for a good reason, maybe.
Sure.
But we really don't know. So, but like, as you say, it's like, this was like really bad for society because it led to all this feuding and warring over these weapons.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a lot that you can kind of try to read in here, right? Because like a terrible feeling struck him, a sense of immense tragedy, of pain and betrayal. He heard screaming he swore he could almost hear. And like to read into this a little bit, to make some predictions, I think we're supposed to maybe say immense tragedy of pain and betrayal and link that to the Radiance betraying humanity. But there's also this bit here where as they remove it, they become individuals again. They originally moved as if one unit and then became individual units. So you wonder if, you know, I'm thinking back of Sanderson lore of other books where the I forget what they were called. The dudes with the nails in them, but like that possibly these things were controlling and hive minding these people, and the betrayal being felt is not humanity, it's a higher power feeling betrayed by their choice to let these things drop these things,
right?
And that's the screaming. And so maybe it is a good thing, maybe it is some power that they said they weren't going to deal with anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they lose their glow, right?
Yeah, right. That's pretty
Um,
distinct too, right? Is that they glowed. None of them do this anymore.
yeah, and of course, your first thought is like, oh, well, maybe they lost what was good about them, and that's why they seem to be evil now.
Hmm.
But then you have to be like, well, maybe they were like super evil before.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing. I think my expectation at this point is Sanderson's going to make it very difficult to predict uh, what is good and what is bad because he intentionally makes it very hard to figure out.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I really loved this scene. And again, like we have to go back to our thing of like what what is rewarded in like what's rewarded in this world is the brutal taking, stealing, and negotiating for these weapons. Where all of our good characters seem to be consistently refusing them.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right,
Let's move
shall we?
on. Yeah, let's do it.
So Kaladin meets up with Wit, who is calling himself Hoyd, and is told a story about an expedition to far-off lands in the west where a group of people brutally murdered anyone who strayed out of line in the name of the Emperor. What you saw belongs to you. A story doesn't live until it is imagined in someone's mind. What does the story mean then? It means what you want it to mean, Hoyd said. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. Too often we forget that. Kaladin frowned, looking westward, back toward the war camps. They were alight now with spheres, lanterns, and candles. It means taking responsibility, Kaladin said. In Uvara, the Uvara, they were happy to kill and murder so long as they could blame the Emperor. It wasn't until they realized that there was nobody to take the responsibility that they showed grief. That's one interpretation, Hoyd said. A fine one, actually. So, what is it that you don't want to take responsibility for? Kaladin started. What? People see in stories what they're looking for, my young friend. He reached behind his boulder, pulling out a pack and slinging it on his shoulder. I have no answers for you. Most days, I feel I never have any answers. I've come to your land to chase an old acquaintance, but I end up spending most of my time hiding from him instead. You said about me and responsibility. Just an idle comment, nothing more. He reached over, laying a hand on Kaladin's shoulder. My comments are often idle. I can never get them to do any solid work. Would that I could make my words carry stones. That would be something to see. He held out the dark wood flute. Here, I've carried her for longer than you'd believe, were I to tell you the truth. Take her for yourself. But I don't know how to play it. Then learn, Hoyd said, pressing the flute into Kaladin's hand. When you can make the music sing back at you, then you've mastered it.
Man, I had a lot of trouble like parsing this story time scene.
Uh-huh.
I knew it was like it's one of those things that feels important, and I think it becomes especially important when you get to the end of the book and you see that Wit is just kind of chilling there waiting for a herald to show up again.
Right, right.
So there's something going on with him that is much deeper, but we don't know what it is yet. But I mean, like just looking at the story for what it is, it's people doing violent acts in the name of their emperor, their
Yeah.
king, their
Their
leader.
their cause, whatever it
Right,
is.
right. And
Um,
I think there's a lot of, I think can be a lot of parallels you can pull to the Almighty here. A lot of these people are doing these acts, are behaving in certain ways, um, to the Almighty, to worshiping of the Almighty and in His name. And we kind of learn at the end of this book that the Almighty doesn't seem to be a god in that traditional sense. He seems to be just a powerful dude that you call me the Almighty, you call me God. I'm not that. It's a little more complicated than that. And I wonder if there's a parallel there.
yeah. Right. I like the idea of radical responsibility. That's something that appeals to me personally. Um, but it's interesting because I agree. Like when I was reading it, I was like, well, what is Kaladin exactly supposed to take responsibility for? Because okay, is he supposed to take responsibility for his bridgemen?
Mm,
And then you're forced to be like, no, I think it's more than that. Even I
yeah,
think he's
yeah.
just meant to take responsibility for like leadership on a grander scale than that. Like I think he's meant to be much more important than just like the guy who saved a handful of bridgemen.
Right. Well, I mean, there's getting back to the idea of the shard blades. Um, what does denying if this is one of the most powerful weapons in the world and you are truly a man of honor, of powerful leadership and ability, and you deny a powerful weapon, like, is doing what's right here hurting more people down the road? Like, this is the ethical question that our characters have been asking each other throughout the story of the book. Like, denying this weapon, like Dalinar at the very end of this book gives away his powerful weapon to save all these men, and I think that's a wonderful moment. I love the moment. It's powerful, it's great. But is there a part of you that says, well, that guy's bad? like is putting a weapon this powerful in the hands of someone awful worth it? And those are calculations that leaders have to make, right? And I think the book is like it says right here, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon.
I like that, and I agree that, like, there's no clear answer for me there, because I think you're meant to. I think where the book is going to go is, like, saving these men's lives from Sadeas is the moral good, but giving up the shard blade is the ethical wrong, or whatever. Whatever language you want to wrap it in, is like nothing is ever unambiguous, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I enjoy that.
And it's wonderful because you've taken, like, the way Sanderson, let's just wait till we get to that, because I definitely pulled that scene to talk about it. But I think the way Sanderson weaves these characters together when they hit, and it's a moment that you shouldn't have been surprised about, but you are. But anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Cool. So, we're skipping ahead a lot here, guys. This is a long book, and the back half is super loaded, so I just felt like I had to skip a whole bunch. But this is pretty good. Dalinar and Sadeas reach an agreement to attack the plateaus together, and they go on this day they go after the tower in an effort to wipe out a huge portion of the Parshendi forces. But Sadeas betrays Dalinar, pulling his troops and bridgemen out, leaving Dalinar and his army trapped to die on the plateau. But our boy Kaladin comes to the rescue, Matt. He seized the spear, the first real weapon he had held since his display in the chasm so many weeks ago. Then he started to run. Slowly at first, picking up speed, reckless, his body exhausted. But he did not stop. He pushed forward, harder, charging towards the bridge. It was only halfway across the chasm. Syl shot out in front of him, looking back, worried. "The words, Kaladin!" Rock cried out as Kaladin ran onto the bridge as it was moving. The wood wobbled beneath him. It was out over the chasm, but it hadn't reached the other side. "Kaladin!" Teft yelled. "What are you doing?" Kaladin screamed, reaching the edge of the bridge, finding a tiny surge of strength somewhere. He raised his spear and threw himself off the end of the wooden platform, launching into the air above the cavernous void. Bridgeman cried out in dismay. Syl zipped around him with worry. Parshendi looked up with amazement as a lone bridgeman sailed through the air towards them. His drain worn-out body barely had any strength left. In that moment of crystallized time, he looked down on his enemies. Parshendi with their marbled red and black skin, soldiers raising finely crafted weapons as if to cut him from the sky. Strangers, oddities in carapace breastplates and skullcaps, many of them wearing beards woven with glowing gemstones. Kaladin breathed in. Like the power of salvation itself, like rays of sunlight from the eyes of the Almighty, stormlight exploded from those gemstones. It streamed through the air, pulling invisible streams like glowing columns of luminescent smoke, twisting and turning and spiraling like tiny funnel clouds until they slammed into him, and the storm came to life again. Kaladin hit the rocky ledge, legs suddenly strong, mind, body, and blood alive with energy. He fell into a crouch, spear under his arm, a small ring of stormlight expanding from him in a wave, pushing down the stones by his fall. Stunned, the Parshendi shied away, eyes widening, song faltering. A trickle of stormlight closed the wounds on his arm. He smiled, spear held before him. It was as familiar as the body of a lover long lost. "The words," a voice said, urgent, as if directly into his mind. In that moment, Kaladin was amazed to realize that he knew them, though they'd never been told to him. "I will protect those who cannot protect themselves," he whispered. The second ideal of the Knights Radiant. Boom.
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 So good. I love everything about this whole part of everything.
Mhm.
I love them turning around and seeing what's happening to Dalinar's army and being like, we should just leave. Fuck these light eyes.
Mhm.
and then just not being able to do it
Yeah.
because it's just wrong, and like being tortured by that, right?
Yeah.
Like we're probably going to die for doing this, and I
Yeah.
don't even feel good about it because they're light eyes and I hate them, but it's just the right thing to do. And I was just like, oh man, this is perfect. This is so good.
It is. It's wonderful. And as Hero points out, we skip the part where Syl says she's an honor spren, and it's like he's trying to convince himself that he doesn't do it, and she's like, "Hey, I'm an honor spren. I bind things. I bind
Uh-huh.
things in honor. So, hey, buddy, you gotta do it."
Uh-huh.
And it's not like she's making him do it, right? She's just reminding him kind of why she's here. I came to you because you were a person of honor, and your honor has given me strength, kind of. And
Yeah.
so he just knows he has to do it. This
Yeah.
like there's so much of this action scene I didn't include because my analysis of it is like this shit's fucking cool. But like as Kyrgyzstan is saying, Dalinar and Adelin's like battling like through the wave of enemies and seeing the bridge and like cheering and like rousing the men to charge for, like it's all just really badass. And yet, like they're also killing a bunch of people. Like I think one of the things I love about this is that you kind of get swept up into the badass hero moment of it, but the book like never lets you stay with that for too long, because then it'll always go, oh yeah, but like these are Parshendi.
Right.
And like I think it's Kaladin who says like when he starts fighting the Parshendi for the first time, he realizes that these are the people that he wanted to go to the Shattered Plains to be around. The true warriors, the honorable warrior people
Uh-huh.
are these people he's fighting against, not the army he's been hanging out with.
Right.
Like it there's like a lot of times in especially in fantasy novels, you just want to have your badass moment and let your character revel in the badassery, and this book never lets you do it. It really doesn't. It just like, and it's not telling you it's wrong either. Obviously, like these men are surrounded, saving these men was the right quote unquote thing to do, but
Right. Yeah, and it's the book is very it takes a while to get to this point, but eventually it's like it almost lets you believe that the Parshendi are the putties, that uh,
why do we keep talking about buddies? two,
uh,
two shows in a row this
I know,
week.
I know. Um, like for a long time we don't even really see them except from afar, and then eventually it's like nah, like they don't really seem to be like super evil, right? Like they're not coded as oh these are just the evil monster guys. These are the orcs. They deserve to die.
Yeah, yeah,
They're if anything they're like, I mean they are quote unquote the Voidbringers, but we don't really know what that means.
yeah.
I
It's
mean my
become evil, but it doesn't mean they're bad. You
yeah,
know?
like my like um almost immediate theory upon getting into this book was like, okay, I think if this is a Cosmere thing, whatever that means, I think that maybe the Voidbringers are just the natives of this planet, and the humans are the invaders, and then like that to me makes a lot more sense than I don't know why exactly why they have the form of humans. Maybe they can change their form. I think there's some suggestion that they can change their form, or that
Mm.
maybe they didn't originally look like this.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I definitely. But yeah, to circle back around, like definitely, this is a war of aggression on the part of the Alethi. So like, yeah, it's good that he saved these men, but yeah, it's not unambiguous and simple.
Sure,
Never
sure.
is.
But still, I mean, I still think we can revel in the moments of amazingness
Hmm.
while we have them. Um, but we got to do some sad now.
Let's have some sad. My slide. So, thinking Dalinar is dead, Navani mourns him by offering a prayer up to the gods.
Or God, I guess. I don't.
Yeah,
Who knows? Who
I'm not
knows
even sure.
anymore?
Yeah. Navani stepped out into the late afternoon sunlight, feeling its heat on her skin. She walked up to her attendants. Brushpin, she said to McCall, who carried a satchel with Navani's possessions. The thickest one, and my burn ink. The short, plump woman opened the satchel, taking out a long brush pen with a knob of hog bristles on the end as wide as a man's thumb. Navani took it. The ink followed. Around her, the guards stared as Navani took the pen and dipped it into the blood-colored ink. She knelt and began to paint on the stone ground. Art was about creation. That was its soul, its essence. Creation and order. You took something disorganized, a splash of ink, an empty page, and you built something from it. Something from nothing. The soul of creation. She felt the tears on her cheeks as she painted. Dalinar had no wife and no daughters. He had nobody to pray for him, and so Navani painted a prayer onto the stones themselves, sending her attendants for more ink. She paced off the size of the glyph as she continued its border, making it enormous, spreading her ink onto the tan rocks. Soldiers gathered around, Sadeas stepping from his canopy, watching her paint, her back to the sun as she crawled on the ground with furiously dipped her brushpen into the ink jars. What was a prayer if not creation? Making something where nothing existed, creating a wish out of despair, a plea out of anguish, bowing one's back before the Almighty, and forming humility from the empty pride of a human life. Something from nothing, true creation. Her tears mixed with the ink. She went through 4 jars. She crawled, holding her safe hand to the ground and brushing the stones and smearing ink on her cheeks when she wiped the tears. When she finally finished, she knelt back on her knees before a glyph 20 paces long, emblazoned as if in blood. The wet ink reflected sunlight, and she fired it with a candle. The ink was made to burn, whether wet or dry. The flames burned across the length of the prayer, killing it and sending its soul to the Almighty. She bowed her head before the prayer. It was only a single character, but a complex one. Thath. Justice. Love it.
Yeah, I love this moment. I wanted to pull a slide for Navani to make sure we talked about her, and this just seemed like the perfect one, because it's beautiful, and I like there's so much in this book about like responsibility and leadership and power, and we have this woman who is a great character, a very powerful character. I'm really intrigued by her, even though we get very little of her in this book. I feel like we're going to see more of her. This widowed woman, this widowed queen who loves her dead husband's brother, and she's really powerful and wonderful, and doing this beautiful act here, creation, like not destruction, power in another way. Like she builds this huge glyph, this huge beautiful glyph that's lit on fire, as this to honoring someone she thinks is dead. And of course it is beautiful and poetic that the confrontation at the end happens right in the middle of this glyph. This is where it happens. The confrontation between Dalinar and Sadeas. They're standing right in the smack dab in the middle of the glyph for justice. It's really wonderful. I think it's beautiful. Like there is a lot of like, through Shaolin we've seen this idea of creation, right? I think creation spren pop up every time she paints or draws, and so we've seen the power of creation, and this is it in another way. I think it's really wonderful.
Yeah, I love the language here. Just bowing one's back before the Almighty, informing humility from the empty pride of a human life.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
like
really
Sanderson's books are always really engaging to me, and I think he's a good writer, but I think he doesn't always write like beautiful prose, but I think this is some of his best work in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
I love this. I really love this.
Yeah, cool.
So I hope we see more of Navani in future books in the series. I think we will. She's great. She's great. All right, so let's get to it. Let's get to the moment where Dalinar upholds his promise to Kaladin to take care of him and his bridgemen. I will take these bridgemen with me to my camp. I'm not looking to sell. I will pay 60 emerald broams per man, Dalinar said. That drew gasps from the watching soldiers on both sides. It was easily 20 times the price of a good slave. Not 1,000 for each, Dalinar, Sadeas said. Kaladin could see the depths of his bridgemen in those eyes. Take your soldiers and go. Leave my property here. Do not press me on this, Sadeas, Dalinar said. Suddenly, the tension was back. Dalinar's officers lowered hands to swords, and his spearmen perked up, gripping the hafts of their weapons. Do not press you? Sadeas asked. What kind of threat is that? Leave my camp. It's obvious that there is nothing more between us. If you try to steal my property, I will have every justification in attacking you. Dalinar stood in place. He looked confident, though Kaladin saw no reason why. And another promise dies, Kaladin thought, turning away. In the end, for all his good intentions, this Dalinar Kholin was the same as the others. Behind Kaladin, men gasped in surprise. Kaladin froze, then spun around. Dalinar Kholin had summoned his massive shard blade. It dripped beads of water from having just been summoned. His armor steamed faintly, stormlight rising from the cracks. Sadeas stumbled back, eyes wide. His honor guard drew their swords. Adolin Kholin reached to his hand to his side, apparently beginning to summon his own weapon. Dalinar took one step forward, then drove his blade point first into the middle of the blackened glyph in the stone. He took a step back. For the bridgeman, he said. Sadeas blinked. Muttering voices fell silent, and the people on the field seemed too stunned, even to breathe. What? Sadeas asked. The blade, Dalinar said, a firm voice carrying in the air. In exchange for your bridgemen. All of them. Every one you have in camp. They become mine to do with as pleased, never touched by you again. In exchange, you get the sword. Boom.
So good. And I just did not see this coming at all. Zero.
No, I mean, like, that's why I think it's wonderful, because you're sitting here and Sanderson has made it so by this point, you know Dalinar, and you know Dalinar as probably one of, if not the only man of honor left in this world, right? Like, he is someone that puts honor above everything. He makes this promise to Kaladin, and he means to keep it. But then in this moment, how? Like how is he going to do that? Like, Kaladin is not sure to trust him, and you're like, okay, like, I get why Kaladin doesn't trust this guy. All Light Eyes have let him down. I totally get it, but not this guy. But then you're just like, how? What is he going to do? What can he do? This guy is so convinced, and so Sadeas is so stuck in his ways that he's never going to let these people go. Never, ever, ever. Is he going to fight him? We can't. And then he pulls out the shard blade, and we remember we've been told, if these two high princes go to war with each other, the kingdom is lost. And as Tringard is saying in chat right now, you want Dalinar to kill him, because at this point you hate Sadeas. What Sadeas did to him, I think what Sanderson did here is really great, Matt, because he kind of did he did a double cross. Like, we think Sadeas is bad the whole time, and then there's this big resolution moment where we're like, oh, thank God he's not bad. And then it's like, psych, he actually is. Right. And so I think that the switch back, like it's kind of like a hurricane when it blows everything one way, and then it's the blow back the other way that really does the damage. It's that powerful of a swing back the other way that just makes you hate him. You just hate him so much. And you want nothing more than to have Dalinar just like slay him right here. But that would be the worst possible thing to do. So you're watching this happen and you're stunned and you want it to happen, but it's bad. And then he slams it into the ground and you're just like,
yeah. Right. And this being perfect, because the whole one of the major original traumas, things that turned Kaladin fully against the Light Eyes, was them stealing a shard blade from him.
Mm-hmm.
And being greedy and justifying that action using pretty words, even though it was clearly unjustifiable.
Yeah.
And here it's complete opposite. A Light Eyes giving up a shard blade for something that was right, to save Dark Eyes, actually.
Yeah. And I love the conversation the two of them have afterwards, where it's just like, what is a shard blade worth? It's priceless. What is a human life worth? Well, that's priceless too. And it's like, so I traded one priceless thing for hundreds of priceless things. It seems like a good trade in my eyes. That's beautiful. I love that so much. It's so great. It's so great. But we still have to ask the question is like, is this going to be a good thing overall? Is this a wise decision? You know, it's the moral decision. Is it the wise decision? I don't know.
I mean,
I want it to be
like just probably, because having saved Kaladin, now Kaladin's gonna become a Surge Binder, which is like way more valuable than a shard blade.
Sure.
But I get it. Like I'm with you in terms of questioning things.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that's what the next chapter is. I think the most questioning we're gonna have to do here, Matt.
Yeah. All right, shall we do the next slide? I mean,
Yeah, let's do it.
so Dalinar has learned his lesson from Sidious. He can't fix his problems through example or argument, so he will do so through force, smashing into the king's room, kicking the shit out of his nephew, and demanding to be made High Prince of War. But I thought you said it was wrong to force men to follow the codes, Elokar said. You said the best you said that the best way to change people was to live right and then let them be influenced by your example. That was before the Almighty lied to me, Dalinar said. He still didn't know what to think of that. Much of what I told you I learned from the Way of Kings, but I didn't understand something. Nahadon wrote the book at the end of his life, after creating order, after forcing the kingdoms to unite, after building lands that had fallen in the desolation. The book was written to embody an ideal. It was given to people who had already had momentum in doing what was right. That was my mistake. Before any of this can work, our people need to have a minimum level of honor and dignity. Adolin said something to me a few weeks back, something profound. He asked me why I forced my sons to live up to such high expectations, but let others go about their errant ways without condemnation. I have been treating the other high princes and their light eyes like adults. An adult can take a principle and adapt it to his needs, but we're not ready for that yet. We are children, and when you're teaching a child, you require him to do what is right until he grows old enough to make his own choices. The Silver Kingdoms didn't begin as unified, glorious bastions of honor. They were trained that way, raised up like youths nurtured to maturity. He strode forward, kneeling down beside Elokar. The king continued to rub his chest, his shard plate looking strange with the central piece missing. We're going to make something of Alethkar, nephew, Dalinar said softly. The high princes gave their oaths to Gavilar, but now ignore those oaths. Well, it's time to stop letting them. We're going to win this war, and we're going to turn Alethkar into a place that men will envy again. Not because of our military prowess, but because people here are safe and because justice reigns. We're going to do it, and you and I are going to, or you and I are going to die in the attempt.
All right, so here's my question to you and to everyone listening. Is this a good thing? Is this a good thing? Because we have our war leader here abandoning the peaceful way, picking up the mantle of, he's becoming the Blackthorn again. That's what he says after this. Like, I'm letting peaceful Nahadin aside. I'm becoming the Blackthorn again. It's all that I'm good at is war, so I'm going to accomplish this through war. I'm going to beat the shit out of everyone. I'm going to make them do what I want to do. And once that is done, at last we can have the peaceful kingdom that really lives up to these ideals. Is that a good thing?
Well, I think the one part of it that I raise an eyebrow at is where he prioritizes winning the war still, and I'm just like, man, you do not need to be wasting your time with fighting the Parshendi. I mean, it just doesn't seem it's maybe it's gonna turn out to be important, but I feel like this is a misfire. He was right at first that they need to end this war as fast as they can and return their attention to their own lands. We know that there are conspiracies brewing, that there are assassinations afoot, and that there's even an assassin coming for him specifically.
Yeah.
So like, he's like 90% right, but I think that the fatal flaw is going to be continuing to persecute this war against the Parshendi. But I don't know. There's probably. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted, and I think we're getting a lot of yes and no. There's a middle road he hasn't quite found yet, says Lori. Sylphrenia says there's good and bad to it. I think so. I mean, I think, like, I do understand the practicality of the idea that, like, you can't change the world just through example, right? Like, living a certain way does not convince people to live your way. Like, I think it's interesting because I think that is kind of to get back to religion again, I think that's kind of a core tenet of a certain type of Christianity, which is the way you bring more people to Christianity is you live the Christian lifestyle, and it will be you will be happy and amazing and wonderful, and you will draw people to you via that. Like that will draw people to you. Live by this code, and people will be drawn to that because they will see the benefits of it. They will see what the good things that it does. That doesn't always work. that doesn't always work. Like, I understand the practicality of the idea that sometimes to get people to do something, you have to make them do it. I love the analogy of children. Like, you can't just tell a child, look, this is the right way. You have to first force them to do it and then explain it to them.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny because I'm pretty sure that Sanderson's specific sect is one that goes in for this idea that you try to be a beacon to others,
Yes.
and they yeah, so I think that's really interesting.
Hmm.
But also, I mean, it's obviously true that um, you do need to teach children to do the right thing, because especially when they're little, they're just psychopaths. But they eventually learn to have the right ideals.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
I think it's interesting because a lot of this is coming from this sentence he says right here. This was before the Almighty lied to me,
yeah,
which he is still interpreting, like, he's still interpreting everything as if he was lied to. Like,
uh-huh,
the Almighty told me to trust in Sadius. That was wrong. And we learn in a slide or two that no, not really. That's not, you just interpreted that poorly. You interpret it like, I still think, like, this idea of unifying them. I don't think unify them means the Alethi people.
yeah. I
Like,
think it means the humans,
yeah, it means, yeah, maybe not just humans, maybe
maybe
like
everyone. Yeah,
everyone. Like,
yeah,
that we get these hints that, like, bad stuff is coming. The I forget what it's called, but, like, unite them. It is interesting how much biases go into this, right?
yeah.
Someone powerful in a dream tells them to unite them, and his thought is immediately, oh, unite my people.
Right.
Not all people.
Right. Well, I think you're right, because we learned that the Almighty, or whoever this figure is, literally doesn't know who's going to receive this message.
Right.
So
Right.
it can't possibly refer to the Alethi. It
Yeah.
probably refers to e- e- everybody that isn't actively against them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
desolation, everything that isn't the desolation, and we don't really know what the desolation is, right? Like, maybe it has to do with the Parshendi, but maybe not.
Yeah. Right. 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 Toby says maybe the god is dyslexic and he wants you to untie them. That could be. That could be.
Yeah, we'll see.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So.
I like that you've questioned this, though, because I just sort of took it as a moment of like, oh yeah, awesome,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think the book wants you to question this. I think this book is called The Way of Kings because it's circling around this idea of responsibility and leadership and power, and what is the proper way. What is the proper way to wield power in that regard? What is the proper way to wield a shard blade? Like, I go back to the first half when Dalinar is using his shard plate to dig a latrine ditch, and
Hmm.
he's just, like, kind of pondering about, why don't we use this stuff to do good works? Why
Right.
why is this stuff always used only for destruction, only for war, only for death? And I think a lot of it is circling around this, and we have one of our protagonists here basically saying, "Okay, I'm going all in on the death stuff, but we'll get through it, and then we'll go back to everything's gonna be good," right?
Yeah, right. There's definitely ambiguity to it, right? Because I think it's interesting, because you can totally view failing to use your power to make people behave better as an abdication of responsibility. We were
Sure,
talking about
sure,
responsibility, right? That was Hoyd's story. But on the other hand, it's definitely easy to go too far in
sure.
using your power to make people behave better. You end up with a police state.
Hmm.
So and that's fine. I mean, I think if anything, what we're doing here is we're introducing what's going to be the theme and the conflict of the next book. This isn't meant to be solved here. This is Dalinar telling us what he's thinking, and then we're going to see the ramifications of this in the next book. Is
I
my
think
expectation. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think you're right.
cool.
So let's learn about our sweet Parshendi, who never did anything wrong at all.
Okay.
So, having realized that Yasna and herself can both soulcast without the use of a soulcaster for reasons that they haven't explained yet, the two make up and agree to continue working together. Yasna reveals why she's so interested in the Voidbringers. Yasna looked over her sheets of paper. Do you know the real difference between me and a believer, Shaolin? Shaolin shook her head. It strikes me that Religion, in its essence, seeks to take natural events and ascribe supernatural causes to them. I, however, seek to take supernatural events and find the natural meaning behind them. Perhaps that is the final dividing line between science and religion, opposite sides of a card. So you think... The Voidbringers had a natural, real-world correlate, Yasna said firmly. I'm certain of it. Something caused the legends. What was it? Yasna handed Shallan a page of notes. These are the best I've been able to find. Read them. Tell me what you think. Shallan scanned the page. Some of the quotes, or at least the concepts, were familiar to her from what she'd read already. Suddenly dangerous, like a calm day that became a tempest. They were real, Yasna repeated. Beings of ash and fire. We fought with them, Yasna said. We fought so often that men began to speak of the creatures in metaphor. 100 battles, 10 tenfolds. Flame and char, skin so terrible, eyes like pits of blackness. Music when they kill. We defeated them, Yasna said. Shallan felt a chill. But the legends lie about one thing, Yasna continued. They claimed we chased the Voidbringers off the face of Roshar or destroyed them. But that's not how humans work. We don't throw away something we can use. Shallan rose, walking to the edge of the balcony, looking out over the lift, which was slowly being lowered by its 2 porters, Parshmen, with skin of black and red, ash and fire. Stormfather, Shallan whispered, horrified. We didn't destroy the Voidbringers, Yasna said from behind. Her voice haunted. We enslaved them. Dun dun dun!
It's great.
It's a great moment. It really is. And I think this moment works because throughout the book, we are so in our characters' points of view that they just never question the Parshmen at all. Like, one of the things, like, it's so fascinating to read this book and be looking at these enslaved peoples, and you're looking at these Parshendi that are fighting the people that are enslaving these peoples, and all these guys are like, I don't understand. What is like, what why are they fight? Why are they like that? I don't get it. And it's just like, I think from an exterior perspective, it's so obvious. I mean, not that they're Voidbringers, that was still a reveal, but it's so obvious, like, why the conflict is this way. You're enslaving these people, and you've decided that they don't care about it, that they're docile and whatever, and blah blah blah. Like, you've just decided so definitively that this is the way these people are that you don't even question it, and the idea that they could be something else is so inherently confusing to you that you can't connect dots that are seemingly obvious to connect.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think the Parshmen are probably being like denied something that they need.
Sure.
Because they do seem like dull and simple.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like maybe if you took those and you brought them to the Shattered Plane and you let them do whatever it is that the other Parshendi are doing out there, they would go back to the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah, maybe it's those crystal hearts they need. Maybe that's why they're taking those things all the time.
I think it has something to do with the storm energy, I think.
Yeah.
And it's funny because reading this, I'm like, I don't know why I thought that they changed forms. I think it's just because I literally imagined the Voidbringers as looking like the monsters.
We're told there's like rock people, but I think Yasna says in this chapter that those are distinct. There's the Voidbringers and the rock things that I think had a different name that I can't remember.
Yeah, because definitely the terrifying creatures that Dalinar has to fight in the vision were like a different thing.
Yes,
those were not.
Yes,
but were those called Voidbringers? That's the thing.
I would have to go back and reread that chapter actually.
Yeah, now I'm trying to remember why I thought.
Thunderclasts, everyone is saying those are the rock things.
But the things that attack the people, maybe
I think
the book
those were
is
called
very,
Voidbringers.
But maybe the book is very cute and never actually specifically says they're Voidbringers. That would be something I wouldn't put past Sanderson.
Yeah, because you would assume that Dalinar, if they were Parshendi, would just say, "Hey, that's Parshendi."
Sylphrenia says they were not called Voidbringers.
Well, there we go.
Kyrgyzstan says the book is cute. I knew it.
Stupid cute book.
Damn it, Sanderson. Always getting me with your carefully leaving out words where I expect them to be. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for confirming that I'm right about everything.
I don't think that's what they said. Let's just set the record straight here. Tell
They
let
did
me
not say that.
that. I mean, I guess that's true.
The best kind of true. All right. Last slide. Time for last slide.
Sure, sure.
Dalinar has one final vision where he realizes who the person showing him all these dreams was. The figure still stared into the sky. I leave this because there must be something, a hope to discover, a chance that someone will find what to do. Do you wish to fight him? Yes, Dalinar found himself saying, despite knowing that it didn't matter. I don't know who he is, but if he wants to do this, then I will fight him. Someone must lead them. I will do it, Dalinar said. The words just came out. Someone must unite them. I will do it. Someone must protect them. I will do it. The figure was silent for a moment. Then he spoke in a clear, crisp voice. Life before death. Strength before weakness. Journey before destination. Speak again the ancient oaths and return the men the shards they once bore. He turned to Dalinar, meeting his eyes. The Knights Radiant must stand again. I cannot comprehend how that can be done, Dalinar said softly, but I will try. Men must face them together, the figure said, stepping up to Dalinar, placing a hand on his shoulder. You cannot squabble as in times past. He's realized that you, given time, will become your own enemies, that he doesn't need to fight you. Not if he can make you forget, make you turn against one another. Your legends say that you won, but the truth is that we lost, and we are losing. Who are you? Dalinar asked again, his voice softer. I wish I could do more, repeated the figure in gold. You might be able to get him to choose a champion. He is bound by some rules. All of us are. A champion could work well for you, but it is not certain. And without the Dawn Shards, well, I have done what I can. It is a terrible, terrible thing to leave you alone. Who are you? Dalinar asked again, and yet he thought he knew. I was God, the one you call the Almighty, the creator of mankind. The figure closed his eyes. And now I am dead. Odium has killed me. I am sorry.
I'm sad.
You okay there, Scott?
I'm sad. God's dead.
God's dead.
God
Odium
is
killed
dead.
him. Odium, man. We knew it was Odium the whole time.
Who's Odium?
I don't know. Never heard that name before.
I think the name. No, I think the name is in a couple other places in the story.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I figure Odium is, Ruin.
Ruin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here we don't know, right? Like, I don't think we know what the Dawn Shards are, right? There's like you must return the shards, return to men the shards they once bore. The Knights Radiant must stand again, right? So, I mean, I don't know. This is just a lot of fun mystery at the end of the book that is basically prepping us for book 2. And I thought maybe we could just like speculate on what the fuck is going on here.
Sure.
You got any speculation here?
I mean, I think there's an evil force, an evil demiurge who either created or is on the side of the Voidbringers, the Parshendi, and is trying to wipe out humanity. I don't know what's going on with the symbol head things or the Spren or the shard blades. I think some of these things are probably created by this figure, the Almighty. Many of them were probably not, though. And like it's pretty clear that this world is just extremely hostile and not suitable for humans. So I like my theory that like the humans are the invasive species and the Parshendi and or whatever force resides here is just trying to reject the invaders. That's all I got. That's all I got. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I mean, like your prediction was there's a bad guy. Like basically. He's like there's a bad guy.
I said more words. Said more words after that.
Yeah. You did. You said words. No, yeah, I mean I think you're on the right track. I think this is going to be more complicated than just human good. I mean, the question is here, like, I do think it's interesting here. We have the word we have men used, like men must face them together. Um, return to men the shards they were once bore, the creator of mankind, right? Not the creator of life, not like. So I think that we are drawing a distinct difference, and I do think that the interesting thing about Roshar is this idea that everything on here looks not like, I think you were right that like none of this looks like a place where we as in humanity do well. like
Right.
like there's all this crustacean shit everywhere.
Rocks,
It just,
high storms.
it seems like the type of being that would have evolved on this world would be more like the Parshendi than it is like the humans.
Yeah. They have chitinous carapaces,
Right, right,
etc. Yeah.
right, right. And yeah, I mean, I think as people are pointing out in chat, we have Shinovar, which is like this exception to that rule, which is like the place that looks like like Earth kind of. It's like Earth. They have all those chickens.
They sell the chickens because it's the only place in the world where chickens can live.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, no, it's a good planet. There's one place where people can live without having to live under rocks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Right. I mean, if you look back, I like your opinion or your theory about how like humanity came here and was not from here, because I mean that's the legend, right? Like we talk about how they were tossed out of the halls of, I forgot what it's called, the halls of whatever.
Yeah.
They were tossed out of that place and thrown here to Roshar, and that seems like how you would take a myth of just like, hey, there's this planet and you have to live on this shitty planet now.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I wonder if the symbol head guys were like related to the halls of whatever, as we're now going to call them.
The Tranquillin halls.
The Tranquillin
or
halls.
as they are also called, the halls of whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense to me as like another kind of power block. Like the Tranquillin halls being their own power block, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other things in this book. Like I said when I at the very beginning, like there's a lot of stuff in this book, and a lot of it we didn't even cover. Like we didn't cover Dalinar's he doesn't remember his wife because he got a gift and a curse from some lady, the night something. I don't even remember what it was because it's just kind of thrown in there. One criticism I do have of this book is that with the exception of Zeth, I don't think the interludes work that well, because like I don't get them. like there's a lot of stuff that's introduced there and you're just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and also they don't tend to be, they just don't tend to be interesting. Like you're just like, come on, get back to the characters. Like they're not fun interludes where it's like, oh, this character, I always wanted to know what was going on with this character, or like, you know, or like like a Parshendi interlude would have been like, oh shit, Parshendi, but no, it's just like, oh, some guy from Shinovar.
Yeah.
What's that?
And I'm sure it'll make sense in like 2 books time.
Yeah, right. I agree. Like that was one of the things where I would just chop those things right off into the trash can.
Just right in there. Just
yeah.
I kind of like, maybe I'm not that harsh, but I didn't pull anything from them because I don't like, and that's, people are saying I didn't pull the finale of the book in which Harold comes and says it's here and then the book ends, and the reason I didn't pull that is because like I don't know what to say about it except that, well, that's scary.
Yep. And we kind of sort of expected that, like the book began with the Herald being left behind, and then this guy shows up wild-eyed and dirty, and he's the Herald, and we're like, oh well, okay.
Yeah, Hichano says the lake one especially was rough. Yeah, I don't even remember that one. It's just like the guys in the lake and okay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff in those interludes that I just had trouble grasping onto a lot.
Yep. All right.
Any questions as we wind it down? Anything that you wanted us to cover or you wanted to bring up? So yeah, okay. The death rattles is something we really didn't go into. So all throughout the book, we have this moment where it's quotes from people, and then under the quote is like said by blah 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 right before their death, right? And we learn that the king of, I forgot the name of the city, the big city that
Well,
Shaolin and Yasna is in.
Taravangian is his name. I don't know.
Taravangian,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, is he is killing these people brutally to hear the death rattles because he sees something important about it,
Right.
which goes into our questions of morality, our questions of greater good, of kind of utilitarianism. I don't know why I paused there. That was weird. What did you think of all that, Matt? It's one of those things that I just don't. I mean,
Yeah.
thematically, I like the idea of like, well, he's doing this thing because he feels it's for the greater good. We're learning something, and
Yeah.
I love that he feels like he needs to do it himself. Like he's the one actually going in there and draining a lot of these people. Um,
Yeah, I mean, he strikes me as the utilitarian kind of antipode to the honor and justice
mm-hmm.
mentality of somebody like Dalinar,
Yeah, yeah,
where I think I've said many times, I think the best kind of storytelling is when you embody different opposing philosophical viewpoints in your characters. It makes it even better if the author themselves is a bit conflicted, and then you kind of have the characters have it out between them. And yeah, I mean, what Taravangian is doing is like viscerally horrifying.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
But also it's the kind of thing where you can be like, I bet he wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't a good like utilitarian justification for it, where potentially this could be really really impactful and maybe save humanity from extinction.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so I'm he seems like a bad dude, but like bad dude in a complicated way where uh he wants he wants to save humanity. Like the
yeah.
threat that he's protecting against is so grave that he's willing to justify almost anything.
Sure, sure, sure. And as Tringard says, the fact that he is the one doing it, hitting that beat again about leadership responsibility, even for morally questionable things. Yeah,
Mhm.
totally, totally. Jason says there's one of those death rattles that describes Kaladin's jump. Here, this is. I like these things that Sanderson does, but I don't think they're effective at actually conveying information. Because like, there's no way I read that and then remember it as Kaladin's
No,
doing his jump.
I I sure didn't.
Like it's kind of like an Easter egg for me, and that's just about it. Um, it's
Yeah,
cool. Like I'm not saying I don't like it, but like if the book wanted to convey that information, I'm opening chapter 59 right now because I want to see it. But um,
read it to me.
okay. Above the final void I hang, friends behind, friends before. The feast I must drink clings to their faces, and the words I must speak spark in my mind. The old oaths will be spoken anew. See,
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't have even connected that to it. Like now that someone says it, like I get it, and I see that. Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah.
cool. I love it. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, I do like the death rattles. I just didn't remember them when I was supposed to.
No,
So
never. No.
I did like that Taravangian is super annoyed that Zeth injured his guards. Even though he then proceeds to do this horrible bloodletting murder thing, he's like, I told you specifically not to injure my guards.
Hmm.
Thought that was good. I like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see. Apparently, yeah, the name of Wit as Hoyd is a name from Mistborn. Um,
okay. Yet more things I
uh,
didn't catch somehow.
yeah, definitely didn't catch that. Sorry, it's scrolling. It's scrolling too fast. Someone mentioned something about. I lost it. I lost it. Thoughts on the title? The book obviously discusses responsibility and leadership, but does not appear to me be the main theme. Um,
I don't know if I can even say what the main theme is yet.
I think it's yeah. I don't think it has like one. I don't think it has like one primary thing, but I think the idea of responsibility, of honor, of code, of a code to live by, of moral rightness versus uh, correctness, like I think is a big theme of the story. Um,
Hmm.
I do not remember Hoyd from Mistborn at all. No,
I
no.
just looked it up. Apparently, he's extremely forgettable and minor and inconsequential.
Yeah.
So
Laurie says he deliberately wrote them, so if you ignore the death rattles, the story still works fine. Since I basically ignored them, I mean, I read them, but they also just went like in my head and right out of it. And I thought the story worked fine. So yeah, I agree with that.
John says, which character or plot line are you most excited to learn about in the next book? Funnily enough, I'm probably most interested in Shallan's, but like everyone else is a very close second.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Kaladin kind of takes his place in a position of power in Dalaran's new army.
Yeah. Right. And we even have this element set up where Adolin is actually a bit affronted at how, Kaladin ordered him around.
Sure.
I think there's going to be friction between those two.
Yeah, but I think the most amount of unanswered questions go through Shallan at this point. So
Yeah.
I agree with you that focusing on her and what her and Yasna are going to be exploring and trying to find out, I think is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the 2 four gods, honor, odium, preservation, and ruin? Was the Almighty called Honor? Did I miss that?
I think somebody pointed out that the chapter is called Honor is Dead.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, yeah. I mean, definitely, I like that Sanderson uses these like opposing force gods, which are balanced in power.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how he frames his stories.
Yeah, like
at a high level.
Odium is just like hatred, right? Like odious, right?
I guess.
Yeah,
we don't really know.
Jason says definition of odium: general or widespread hatred or disgust directed towards someone as a result of their action.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that goes with my that perfectly supports without any ambiguity my theory that he hates the invading humans for invading his planet.
Pretty odious, that odium.
Yep, pretty odious, that theory of mine. Yeah, I think it's fun. It's a fun way of setting up a fantasy story.
Yeah, I mean these gods are more forces than, but also personified. That's interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting how it both compares and does not match with the Wheel of Time. I'm not going to go into that anymore, really, because that's a completely different discussion. But like,
you got your one Wheel of Time reference in.
Yeah, but Sanderson actually wrote the last Wheel of Time books, so it's relevant.
Sure, I agree with that. Yeah. I remember very little of the Wheel of Time, but I think I remember what you mean.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Do we miss anything?
I don't. Well, no. We covered absolutely every.
Well, we definitely did not do that.
See, that was a Shallan joke that I just did there.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. John says, anything particularly stood out to you as an improvement over Mistborn? I just think the guy's a better writer. I think he writes more compelling characters. I think he writes set pieces I think the action sequences were more exciting. I think the character work was more complicated and nuanced. I just generally thought it was a better written book.
Yeah. I feel like everything that was supposed to landed the way it was intended. Whereas in Mistborn, there were some things where I was kind of like, yeah, that was pretty good. I guess that worked. But I think everything in this at the end just bam, 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 bam hit me exactly right. So.
I guess the one thing, prime number theorem that I saw in Mistborn that I would like to see in Stormlight. I mean, I think this is like. I'm answering this knowing that I definitely think this is probably going to be discussed, is just how all this stuff connects to each other. In what ways. Like, I think so far we've seen that in Mistborn, magic revolves around metal. In this, it seems to be the Stormlight stuff, which is just a different kind of energy.
Yeah. And like rock seems to be important in this world.
Yeah.
In some way.
We didn't talk about how the whole Shinovar thing about how walking on rock is like sacrilegious to them.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention is like the idea of responsibility. Seth is a character who is super willing and even eager to be like, I have to do this because I'm truthless, and it's just complete abdication of any kind of personal responsibility. He rejects all responsibility, and he even comes to like resent the people who he's ordered to kill. it gets really screwed up, and you're just like, dude, you're doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because at first I remember last month we were like, is he magically compelled to obey because of magic? And this, by the end of this book, it seems to answer that question. It seems to me the answer is no. He believes he has to do this because of his ideology, but like that's a complete failure of personal responsibility, which is one of the major themes. So
Yeah, no, I that's great. I'm glad you pulled that out. It's one of those things that I wish we could have pulled into a slide, but there's just too much.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. And Jason says, in a sense, he is also bound by honor. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's one of those ways in which you can show that the concept of honor can be corrupted.
Right. Or just like don't try to adhere to one particular concept at the expense of of all others.
Yeah, Jess. He's just following orders. He has
Yeah,
no control at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which name has the most confusing pronunciation?
Definitely Shaolin.
Yeah. It just feels like it should be Shaolin to me.
It's I mean, I was saying Shaolin, and I listened to the audiobook reader say Shaolin 10,000 times. So yes.
What do you think of the Hearthstone chapters? Hearthstone. So the flashbacks to Kaladin, Cal, as.
Oh, that was a lot of that I felt was boring.
That was not what I expected you to say at all.
Yeah.
You really threw me for a loop there.
No, like that is one of the parts where I would be like, instead of doing 3 things with 1 paragraph, we're doing 0.5 things with 1 chapter. Like did you need this whole flashback to establish like that he was once a young man who wanted the affections of a girl? No, you did not. I'm going to answer that question for you. You did not. Did not need that. We've established all of these things about Kaladin already in more efficient ways elsewhere, and it's nor is it particularly entertaining in and of itself as a chapter. So like that was the stuff that I just could have really done without.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of them that are more necessary than others.
Yeah.
Like I think the one where he sees his father defend their home from the thieves that are just like the other townspeople, I think is pretty important. But I guess you could do that in a different way.
Yes, there were some that I liked a lot. I liked the one where it's revealed that his father was the thief. I liked a lot of the tea and stuff, but it didn't need to be spread out.
I didn't need the Hunger Games I Volunteers tribute one, really.
Yeah.
I did really like the Tien dies one. I thought that was
gutting. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awful and wonderful.
It just took a long time to get where it was going.
Yeah.
That was
the art printed in the book. Matt did the audiobook, so he didn't see it. There was Matt. There's certain chapters that have like art in it. At the start of a chapter. Some of it's cool. Like, I'd never like saw like I'm super glad I had this. I think it's pretty art sometimes. Like, one of them is a map of the assault on the tower, and I thought that was kind of cool because like a lot of that. There's a lot of reliance on understanding how the plateau works out, like looks, and I thought that kind of helped me get a visual of it.
Someone's telling me, Jess is telling me that the audiobook has the art. I don't know where I would even find that, but I guess I'll look.
PDF.
I guess I should have. I don't want to touch it right now because I'm afraid it'll start playing on the stream.
All right. Want to talk about next month? Let's talk about next month.
Let's do it. What's next month, Scott?
So next here's what happened. There was a tie between 2 books. The 2 books were The Diamond Age, right? Yes. Yep. And Republic of Thieves, the Scott Lynch book. So normally when we have a tie, Matt and I just pick between it, but we did that, and then Matt picked one and I picked the other, so that's another tie. So I flipped a coin, And next week's book is going to be The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. Decided by coin flip.
Yep.
So
not just pro Scott bias on your part.
No, I promise. I flipped a coin.
I believe you, Scott.
Next month's book. Thank you, Prof. Next month's book.
So we're finishing out the Scott Lynch Gentleman Bastard series.
We are.
Or sort of. Isn't there supposed to be one more? Yeah, there is. But
I think there's going to be several more, but it's been long delayed. So I think the next one is coming out fairly soon.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So yes, Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. It will be Friday, May 29th at 9:30 p.m. So we've got 5 weeks for this one. I have generally liked this series, so I'm kind of excited to see how this one goes. I've heard this is not like the best one in the series, but I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, he's just a pretty delightful writer. I actually read this one already because I was loving the series so much.
You cheated.
I cheated. Yep, cheated. But yeah, I think it'll be good. I'll be glad that we've covered all of the books in the series so far.
Yeah, I will too. What happened. This is the same thing has happened with Stormlight Archive now, where I really enjoyed this book. I want to read the rest of the books, but also I'm like, do I read them or do I wait for them to come back around on book club? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm kind of torn here, Matt. And I guess this is where I'll turn to you, the audience / listeners, if you're listening to the audio recording of this. We divided this into 2, and I'm not like super happy with it. Like, I think this episode is fantastic. I'm very happy with how this went. I thought this was a great conversation. I thought the audience participation was wonderful. I think the first half was a little weird, to a point where I wasn't super satisfied with it. So I don't know if that's a good solution to when you have a book this big, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if it ever happens again, I think we might have to just do it on a case by case basis. I agree that the first half was weird, but I also like that we got to really dig into the second half. I mean, we easily took 2 hours solid talking about the second half of this book.
Sure.
So it's kind of 6 to 1, half dozen of the other, unfortunately. There's no clear, unambiguous moral right answer here.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah, I would just be interested to see what everyone thought. And everyone's telling me I have complete control over when we do the next book because we make the polls. But I don't know if Words of Radiance is on. I'm looking at no one submitted it yet.
No one submitted it, y'all.
No one submitted it. So
we don't have any power to add books that are not submitted.
We're not allowed to add our own books.
Yeah. Who decided that rule? Scott did. Not me. I don't take any responsibility.
Just do a 5-hour book club.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I like that suggestion.
No.
You first.
Jess is saying because we need to read Warbreaker first. So is that in here? Let's check. Yeah, it is. Someone submitted Warbreaker.
Okay.
First half definitely felt a bit weak. One slightly, but see, I don't think it would be slightly longer. I don't know. Like, it would be. I don't know. We'll think about this. And we'll come to you guys with a solution that we've come up with. But I definitely think we're going to be covering these books in the future. I feel like that's inevitable.
Yep. It's just, maybe Sanderson should write shorter books.
Yeah, Brando.
That would be really convenient for us.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in live. Like I said earlier, I thought it was a great conversation, great discussion. I really enjoyed diving into the themes and what I think this book is saying and all the fun clue. I'm sure you guys were having some fun with the predictions that Matt was making. Like I think his best one was that there's a bad guy.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. Yeah, and if you like what we do here, if you like our predictions, and you want to see more of this kind of stuff over here in Doof Media, then head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. You'll get access to our private Discord server as well as the ability to vote for whichever books we cover and tons of other cool benefits. So go check it out.
Yeah, if just one more of you would have pledged and then voted, I would not have had to flip this 20-cent euro coin that I flipped, and I decided this side was heads, and the harp on the back was tails for some reason. But it's your fault. It's tails again. It's tails again.
Oh, shit.
All right, folks, that is it for us. Once again, if you have any questions or comments or just want to reach out and let us know anything, you can find us on Twitter at doofmedia or email us at doofmedia@gmail.com. So that's it. We'll see you all next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Scott, if it wasn't an American coin, it doesn't count.
Oh, that's not fair. I have stopped recording.
Should have been one of those two-headed two-faced coins.
I got hot in this room during that show. Got all your lights on.
It is also hot in this room.
I am turning the AC on.
Book clubbing is thirsty work, folks.
It is. I flipped the coin. Did I decide what before or after I flipped it? I decided it before. I said harp tails, this thing that has the European Union on it and 20 euro cent was heads, and then I flipped it. Okay, now it's heads, but it's too late.
It's too late.
Tringard says they listened to 10 minutes of the appendix on accident, thinking it was a rather dense epilogue. Did you do that, Matt?
No. I don't know why I didn't. That sounds like exactly the kind of thing I would have done.
I mean, technically, well, let's see. Yeah, I guess on here's I had a dime here that I found later. I should have flipped this dime because there's an actual head on it. There's no tails. Just a torch. It's weird that it doesn't actually say 10 cents on here. It says 1 dime. Okay, what does that mean?
Currency is stupid. Never believed in nickels myself.
Do any coins have tails? Yeah, where did tails come from? Yeah, I mean, you could go context clues with dime to it's going to be 10 something, sure, but tails coin origin. I mean, it's probably just because it's the opposite of heads.
You've always had like an emperor's head or something on it.
The first recorded use of tails to mean the reverse side of a coin occurred in 1684 in a comedy called The Atheist by playwright Thomas Otway.
Okay.
Before that, it was done by the Romans and was called navia aut caput, ship or head, as some coins had a ship on one side and the head of the emperor on the other.
So from now on, we got to say heads or ships instead.
I like
it. To be super, pretentious.
Heads or ships.
Well, thanks for hanging out, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was great. That was heavily attended. Sorry we didn't get to all your comments. The chat got a little crazy at times, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Eagles do have tails. A Sonic commemorative coin. Heads and butts. I like it.
Should have been heads and butts.
Heads and butts. Do you like heads or ships, or heads or butts better?
Oh, heads or butts for sure.
Okay. I got pinged. Where did I get pinged? Oh, it's Ruben. Ruben. Oh, they're playing Portal 2.
Oh, well, that's not fair.
Hey, remember when you, fucking destroyed Kyrgyzstan for no reason? Remember that?
It's totally
hey, Tringard, Sammy, Toby, Sofrena, Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan. I wish I could say I was joking, because I didn't even do it on purpose. I was just like, oh yeah, there was another name, Kyrgyzstan. And then it came out sounding that. Whatever.
Yeah, why do you hate him? I don't understand.
Everyone leave me alone.
Let me refresh our entry form and see if anyone's added Words of Radiance again. I had one of those moments in the middle of the podcast where people were laughing at me because I said Words of the Radiance. And then my book, the second book, is on my shelf right there where I can see it. And I was like, oh, I get what the title means now. I get it.
Gotcha. All right, everyone. I think I have to go.
I did.
So
Yeah. I don't have to go, but I'm probably just going to go play some Hollow Knight. Or I'm going to play Hollow Knight while watching Ruben and Elliot play Portal 2 better than we did.
So everyone go watch Ruben and Elliot play Portal 2.
Yeah, Ruben and Elliot are playing Portal 2 on twitch.tv/Doof Media. So go watch them. They beat us in our Doof and Chill race. It was a lot of fun. You should go do that.
Yeah. Good night.
Farewell.
Or good afternoon or whatever.
How do I turn this off?
I don't know.
End stream. There it is. Bye-bye.